Elena Carter's hands were still shaking when she locked herself inside the hospital supply room and dialed 911. Outside the door, chaos moved like a storm through Street Aurelius Medical Center. Boots pounded across the hallway. Nurses whispered in panic. Somewhere near the emergency bay, a man screamed once, then went silent. Elena pressed the phone tighter to her ear, her breath breaking apart in her chest. 911. What's your emergency? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because through the thin metal door, she heard a voice. Low, calm, terrifying. Fin here. Elena's blood went cold. She knew that voice. Everyone in Chicago knew that voice, even if they pretended they didn't. Luca Moretti. The man whose name turned conversations into whispers. The man people crossed streets to avoid. The man who had been carried into her ER 20 minutes ago, with blood soaking through his black shirt, a bullet wound near his ribs, and 3 armed men threatening every doctor in the room. Elena had been the only nurse brave enough or stupid enough to touch him. She had cut through his shirt with trembling scissors. She had pressed gauze to his wound. She had told his men to back off when they crowded the trauma bed. And Luca, half conscious and bleeding, had opened his dark eyes and looked straight at her. Not like a patient, like a predator, waking up in a cage. Now he was looking for her. Elena Carter, the operator said. Can you speak? Her stomach dropped. She had never given her name. How do you know my name? Elena whispered. Static crackled on the line. Then the operator's voice changed. It became male, soft, controlled, almost amused. You shouldn't have called the police, sweetheart. Elena froze. The phone slipped slightly against her damp cheek. Her pulse roared so loudly she almost didn't hear the door handle turn. Once, twice, locked. A shadow appeared beneath the door. Elena, Luca's voice said from the other side. She backed away so fast her shoulder hit a shelf. Boxes of gloves crashed to the floor. Her breath came out sharp, terrified. Go away, she said, but her voice barely existed. Silence. Then his voice again, lower. If I wanted to hurt you, that lock wouldn't matter. Her hand tightened around the phone. The deadline buzzed in her ear. She looked around for something, anything. A metal tray, a pair of scissors, a shelf full of bandages and antiseptic wipes. Nothing that could stop a man like him. Elena, he said. And this time there was something different beneath the command. Urgency. You have 10 seconds to open this door. She swallowed. So your men can drag me away? A pause. My men aren't the ones coming for you. Her entire body went still. From somewhere down the corridor came the sound of glass shattering. Then shouting. Not hospital staff. Not police. Men. Several of them. Angry. Armed. Moving fast. Elena's fingers went numb around the phone. Luca's voice dropped into something lethal. Open the door. She didn't move. The world outside erupted. Gunfire cracked through the ER. Elena screamed and fell against the shelves as bullets punched into the hallway wall. Staff cried out. Someone yelled for everyone to get down. The lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed into a cold emergency glow. The supply room door shook violently. Not from Luca, from something slamming into it from the outside. Elena covered her mouth, tears burning her eyes. The lock began to bend. A man's voice snarled from beyond the door. She's in here. Elena's breath stopped. Then Luca Moretti spoke again, but not to her. Touch that door, he said, and I'll bury everyone you love before sunrise. The hallway went silent. For one fragile second, no one moved. Then the gunfire started again. A body hit the floor outside with a sickening thud. The door burst open. Elena stumbled backward, ready to scream, but Luca stepped inside first. He was pale from blood loss. His black shirt, open beneath a hastily wrapped bandage, one hand pressed to his side. His dark hair was damp with sweat and rain. His eyes were sharp, furious, alive with something that made the room feel smaller. Behind him, the hallway looked like a war zone. He slammed the door shut and locked it. Elena stared at him, shaking. "You cut my phone line," she whispered. "Yes. You stopped me from calling the police." "Yes. You're insane." His jaw tightened. "Probably." Another bullet struck the door. Elena flinched hard. Luca moved before she could think. He crossed the room, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her down behind a steel supply cart just as another round tore through the upper half of the door. His body covered hers. Warm. Heavy. Wounded. Protective. Elena's hands pressed against his chest to push him away, but she felt blood spreading beneath the bandage. "You're bleeding again," she whispered. His eyes dropped to her mouth for half a second, then back to her eyes. "And you're still worried about me? I'm a nurse." "No," he said quietly. "You're scared, but you're still trying to save the monster." Her throat tightened. Outside the door, footsteps gathered. Too many. Luca reached beneath his coat and pulled out a gun. Elena recoiled. He noticed. Something dark passed over his face, not guilt. Exactly. Something colder. Older. "I told you," he said. "My men aren't the ones coming for you." "Then who are they?" His gaze locked onto hers. For the first time, Luca Moretti looked almost human, almost afraid. "They came because of what you saw." Elena shook her head. "I didn't see anything." "Yes," he said, voice dropping. "You did." She remembered then. The emergency bay. Luca unconscious on the trauma bed. One of his men leaning too close. A tattoo on the man's wrist. A symbol Elena had seen before. On her father's police files. Before he was murdered. Her breath vanished. Luca watched the realization spread across her face. The pounding on the door grew louder. Elena whispered, "What is happening?" Luca leaned closer. His voice a deadly promise against the gunfire. "Your father didn't die in an accident." The door began to break, and Luca smiled without warmth. "He died because he tried to expose my family." The door cracked down the center. Elena stared at Luca, unable to breathe, unable to move, unable to understand why the most dangerous man in Chicago had just spoken her father's name like he had been carrying it for years. "My father was killed by a drunk driver," she whispered. Luca's expression did not change. "That is what they paid the papers to print." Another violent slam hit the door. The steel hinges screamed. Elena flinched, but Luca didn't. He stayed crouched beside her behind the supply cart. One hand gripping the gun, the other pressed against the blood blooming through his bandage. "Elena," he said, his voice low and controlled. "When that door opens, you stay behind me." She laughed once, breathless and broken. "You just told me your family killed my father." His eyes sharpened. "I said he died because he tried to expose my family. I didn't say I killed him. That's supposed to make me feel safe?" "No." His gaze dropped to the trembling fingers wrapped around her phone. "Nothing about me should make you feel safe." The door shook again. A piece of metal snapped loose and clattered across the floor. Elena's throat tightened as old memories clawed their way up from places she had spent years trying to bury. Her father's funeral in the rain. Her mother standing beside the casket, silent and hollow. The unopened box of police files that had disappeared from their apartment the same week. The way every adult had stopped talking when Elena walked into a room. She had been 17 then, old enough to know grief had shadows, too young to chase them. "I need the truth," she whispered. Luca looked at her like the truth was a weapon he hated handing over. "You need to survive the next 2 minutes first." The door burst open. 3 men rushed in. Luca fired twice. The sound exploded in the tiny room, deafening and brutal. Elena slammed her hands over her ears as the first man dropped against the shelves, knocking boxes of syringes and gauze to the floor. The second man stumbled backward into the doorway. The third lifted his weapon. Luca turned his body over Elena's before the shot came. The bullet tore through the cart above them. Elena screamed. Luca's face tightened, but he didn't make a sound. He rose from behind the cart like something carved out of violence and pain, grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard, and slammed him into the wall. The gun hit the floor. Luca pressed his own weapon beneath the man's jaw. "Who sent you?" he asked. The man spat blood and smiled. "You already know." Luca's eyes went colder. "Say it." The man looked past him, straight at Elena. "The nurse doesn't leave this hospital alive." Luca struck him with the gun so hard Elena heard bone crack. The man collapsed. For one terrible second, Luca stood over him, breathing heavily, blood running down his side, his face lit by flickering emergency lights. Elena should have seen a monster. She did see a monster, but she also saw the way his injured hand shook, the way his eyes kept cutting back to her, checking if she was hurt, the way he placed himself between her and the doorway without thinking. That was worse. Fear was simple. Confusion was not. Luca turned toward her. "Can you walk?" Elena pushed herself up on unsteady legs. "I don't know." She hated him for sounding calm. She hated herself more for obeying. Her knees nearly gave out. Luca caught her by the elbow, firm but careful, like he was holding something breakable and was furious at the world for making it that way. The contact sent a shock through her. Not desire. Not exactly. Awareness. Dangerous, unwanted awareness. She pulled away. "Don't touch me." His hand dropped immediately, but his eyes stayed on her. "Then stay close enough that I don't have to." They moved into the hallway. The emergency wing had become unrecognizable. Red alarm lights flashed across the walls. Smoke curled near the ceiling. A nurse was sobbing behind the reception desk. A doctor crawled toward a wounded security guard. The automatic doors at the far end were shattered, rain blowing in from outside, turning the white hospital floor into a slick mirror of blood and stormlight. Elena's stomach twisted. This was her hospital, her night shift, her normal, exhausting, underpaid life, and in less than 30 minutes, Luca Moretti had turned it into a battlefield. Or maybe the battlefield had always been there, waiting for her to notice. Elena. She turned. Maya, one of the night nurses, crouched behind a medication cart, eyes wide with terror. "Elena, what is going on?" Elena started toward her. Luca caught her wrist. She glared at him. "She's my friend. And you're the target. She's hurt. She's alive because they aren't here for her." The cruelty of that sentence hit Elena like a slap. She ripped free from him and ran to Maya anyway. Luca swore under his breath and followed. Maya grabbed Elena's sleeve. "The police aren't answering. The phones are dead. Men came in through the ambulance entrance. They're looking for you." Elena's face went cold. "For me?" Maya nodded, crying. "They asked for the nurse who treated Moretti." Luca looked down the corridor, listening. Elena could barely hear anything over the alarms, but Luca's entire body changed. His shoulders settled, his face emptied. The wounded man disappeared, and the boss took over. "2 stairwells are blocked," he said. "They'll herd us toward the west exit." "How do you know that?" Elena asked. "Because that's what I would do." Maya stared at him with pure terror. Elena looked between them, then pulled off her badge and shoved it into Maya's hand. "Take this. Go through pediatrics. Hide in the family restroom until security clears the floor." Maya shook her head. "I can't leave you." "Yes, you can." Elena forced her voice steady. "And you will." Maya's eyes shifted to Luca. "Is he kidnapping you?" Elena opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Luca answered for her. "Yes." Elena turned on him. "Excuse me?" His gaze stayed on the corridor. It's faster than explaining. Maya looked horrified. Elena whispered through clenched teeth. You are not helping. No, he said. I'm keeping you breathing. Another burst of gunfire echoed from the emergency bay. Maya screamed. Luca pushed both women down behind the cart, just as bullets ripped through the wall above them. Elena shielded Maya instinctively, pressing her forehead to her friend's shoulder while plaster dust rained over them. Luca fired down the hall. Once, twice, then silence. He crouched beside Elena. You have 30 seconds to say goodbye. Her chest tightened. It was the first merciful thing he had said, and somehow that made it unbearable. Maya grabbed Elena's face between shaking hands. Don't go with him. Elena's eyes burned. I don't think I have a choice. You always have a choice. Elena looked at Luca. He stood in the storm of broken glass, blood dripping from his bandage, gun at his side, looking like the villain in every story her father had warned her about. But the men hunting her were behind him, and for reasons she did not understand, he was the only one standing in their way. Elena, Luca said, not commanding this time, warning. She hugged Maya once, hard and fast. Then she stood. Every step toward Luca felt like crossing a line she would never uncross. He looked at her face for half a second. Whatever he saw there made his jaw tighten. You're angry, he said. I'm terrified. Good. She almost laughed. Good. Fear keeps people alive. Anger makes them move. And what does grief do? For the first time, Luca did not answer. They moved through the west corridor, past dark patient rooms and abandoned wheelchairs, past flickering machines and spilled medical trays. Elena kept one hand near the wall to steady herself. Her sneakers slipped twice in rainwater dragged in from outside. Luca noticed every time, but he did not touch her again. That restraint disturbed her more than his violence, because Elena knew men who liked power. She had worked under surgeons who raised their voices just to watch nurses shrink. She had treated husbands who smiled politely while their wives flinched beside them. She knew the difference between dominance and control. Luca Moretti had both, but around her, he was choosing when not to use them. They reached the staff elevator, dead. Luca pulled open the stairwell door. Darkness waited below. Elena stopped. I can't go down there. He turned. For one breath, she was 17 again, standing outside her apartment after her father's funeral, hearing men argue in low voices behind a closed door. Her mother telling her to pack a bag. Her father's partner refusing to look her in the eye. Basements, parking garages, dark stairwells, places where people disappeared. Luca saw it. She hated that he saw it. His voice softened just enough to hurt. Elena, don't, she whispered. Don't say my name like you know me. His eyes held hers. I know what it looks like when someone has been afraid for a long time. Her lips parted, but no words came. Downstairs, metal scraped. Someone was waiting below. Luca stepped closer, not touching her, blocking the stairwell from view with his body. Look at me, he said. I don't want to. Do it anyway. She did. His face was too close, pale from blood loss, beautiful in the way storms were beautiful from a distance and deadly up close. You are not 17 anymore, he said. You are not alone in that apartment. And whatever happened the night your father died, I am not letting it happen again. Elena's breath fractured. How do you know about that night? Something moved through his expression. Regret. Before he could answer, a voice echoed from below. Moretti. Luca went still. Elena recognized the voice, though she couldn't place it at first. Then she remembered the ER. One of Luca's men. The one with the tattoo. The one who had leaned too close while Luca lay unconscious. Luca's hand tightened around the gun. The voice below called again, calm and smiling. Send down the nurse, Luca. This doesn't have to become a family matter. Elena turned slowly toward him. Family? Luca's silence told her everything. The man hunting her wasn't a stranger. He was one of Luca's own. The stairwell lights flickered. The voice below laughed softly. She has her father's eyes, doesn't she? Elena's heart stopped. Luca stepped in front of her, but not before she saw the tattooed man appear on the landing below, gun raised, smile cold and familiar. And in his other hand, he held her father's old police badge. Elena forgot how to breathe. The badge hung from the tattooed man's fingers, catching the red emergency light like a small piece of the past dragged out of a grave. Her father's badge, silver scratched at the edges, the number worn soft from years beneath his thumb. The same badge she had seen on the kitchen table when she was a little girl, beside his cold coffee and half-finished case notes. The same badge that had disappeared after his funeral. Elena's body moved before her mind caught up. She stepped toward the stairs. Luca caught her by the arm. "Elena, don't." She didn't even look at him. "Give it to me." The man on the landing smiled. He was younger than Luca by a few years, but his eyes were older in the worst way. Sharp, empty, amused by fear. His dark suit was wet from rain. His collar open, a black tattoo curving from his wrist toward his thumb like a snake coiled around bone. He lifted the badge higher. "Detective Samuel Carter," he said softly. "Very brave man. Very stupid man." Elena's vision blurred. "Give it to me." The man tilted his head. "You sound just like him." Luca's voice cut through the stairwell. "Adrian." The name landed like a blade. Elena looked at Luca. Adrian smiled wider. "You didn't tell her? That hurts." Luca's expression remained cold, but Elena felt the shift in him, a tightening, a dangerous stillness. Adrian was not just one of his men. He was blood. "Your cousin?" Elena whispered. Luca did not answer. Adrian did. Family is such an ugly word when people start pointing guns at each other. He lowered the badge slightly and looked at Elena with a strange kind of intimacy, like he had known her long before tonight. "I was there, you know." The stairwell seemed to tilt. Elena's fingers curled around the railing. "Where?" Adrian's gaze flicked to Luca, then back to her. "The night your father died." The words ripped through her. For years, Elena had imagined that night in fragments, because no one had ever given her the whole story. Rain on the windows, her mother crying in the bathroom, 2 officers at the door, a funeral director asking about clothes, adults speaking softly, careful not to let the child hear. But she had heard enough. Accident, drunk driver, instant, no suffering. All the merciful lies people used when truth was too ugly to put in a room with grief. "You're lying," Elena said. Adrian's smile softened, almost tender. "That's what your mother said too." A sound escaped Elena's throat. Not a sob, not a scream. Something smaller and more broken. Luca moved, fussed. He raised the gun, but Adrian pressed his own weapon forward, not at Luca, at Elena. "Careful," Adrian said. "I only need 1 shot." Luca froze. Elena felt it then, the full weight of his restraint. Luca Moretti, the man men feared, the man who could make a hallway go silent with 1 sentence, was standing still because Adrian had aimed at her. That knowledge should have frightened her. Instead, it lodged somewhere dangerous inside her chest. "Why?" Elena whispered. Adrian's eyes gleamed. "Because your father found something he wasn't supposed to find." "What?" "A ledger. Names. Payments. Judges. Cops. Doctors. Priests. Everyone who ever sold their soul to the Moretti family." Elena looked at Luca. His face gave nothing away, but his silence was its own confession. Adrian continued, enjoying every second. "Samuel Carter thought he was going to expose us, walk into court with evidence, clean up Chicago with honor and a badge." He laughed softly. "Men like that are exhausting." Elena's grief turned hot. "You killed him." Adrian tapped the badge against his palm. "I was young. I followed orders. Whose orders? The stairwell went silent except for the alarm pulsing somewhere above them. Adrian looked at Luca. Luca's jaw flexed. Elena turned slowly toward him. No, she whispered. Luca did not move. No, she said again. But this time her voice cracked under the weight of what she was asking him not to be. Adrian's smile became cruel. Ask him, nurse. Elena stared at Luca, the man who had saved her life, the man who had stopped her from calling the police, the man who knew the details of her father's death, the apartment, the fear, the night, everything inside her had split into before and after. Did you know? She asked. Luca's eyes held hers. Too long, too honestly. Yes, it was worse than a gunshot. Elena stepped back as if he had touched her with something poisonous. You knew who I was when I treated you. Yes, and you didn't tell me. No. Why? Luca's face hardened, but his eyes did not. Because if I said your name in that room, everyone would have known you mattered. The word mattered hit her in a place she hated. Adrian made a soft sound of mock sympathy. How romantic. He ruins your life, then protects you from the people who helped him do it. Luca's gun shifted toward him. I didn't give that order. Adrian's smile vanished. No, but your father did. The stairwell seemed to shrink around them. Elena looked between them, her pulse stumbling. Luca's father, the old Moretti. The name her father had written in notes Elena had never been allowed to read. Vittorio Moretti. Dead now, if the rumors were true. A man whose funeral had shut down half of Chicago because judges, businessmen, priests, and criminals had all wanted to be seen mourning him. Luca's voice turned deadly quiet. Do not speak for the dead. Adrian's eyes flashed. Why not? You've been hiding behind them for years. Another sound echoed from below. Footsteps. More men climbing. Adrian wasn't alone. Luca heard them too. His gaze flicked once toward the darkness beneath the landing. Elena saw his body calculate everything. Distance, angles, time, her position, his wound. He was bleeding worse now. A dark line had reached the waistband of his trousers. His face had gone pale beneath the cold hospital lights, but his hand on the gun remained steady. Adrian noticed Elena noticing. He won't last much longer, he said. That wound reopened 5 minutes ago. Elena hated the instinct that rose inside her. The nurse part of her measured his breathing, his color, the subtle tremor in his left hand. The woman in her wanted to hate him cleanly, but nothing about Luca Moretti was clean. You need pressure on that wound, she said before she could stop herself. Luca's eyes cut to hers. Adrian laughed. Oh, she's perfect. Elena's face burned. I'm not helping you, she snapped at Luca. You already are, Adrian said. That's the problem. The men below came closer. Luca moved one step backward, forcing Elena behind him without touching her. Adrian raised a hand, stopping his men just out of sight. I'll make this simple, he said. Hand over the nurse. Walk away. Tell the family she ran into crossfire. You keep your throne. I clean up the Carter problem. The Carter problem, Elena repeated. Her voice sounded unfamiliar, cold. Adrian looked at her. For 17 years, your father's evidence has been missing. Tonight, you saw my tattoo. You recognized it. That means your mother told you more than she should have. My mother is dead. I know. Elena's stomach dropped. Adrian's eyes stayed on her face. Cancer is a cruel thing, especially when it moves so fast. The world narrowed. The stairwell. The alarms. The gun. Everything vanished except his smile. Elena remembered her mother's hands near the end. Thin, cold, fingers shaking as she locked the bedroom door whenever someone knocked too late. She remembered the pills that made her sleep, the doctors who stopped answering questions, the suddenness of it all. Luca's voice went dangerously quiet. Adrian. But Elena was already staring at him. What did you do to my mother? Adrian shrugged. Nothing a hospital couldn't call natural. Elena lunged. Luca grabbed her around the waist and pulled her back just as Adrian fired. The bullet struck the wall where her head had been. The sound snapped the stairwell open. Luca fired back. Adrian ducked behind the landing wall. His men surged upward from below, guns raised, dark shapes moving through emergency light and smoke. Luca pulled Elena toward the upper floor. "Run," she fought him. "No. He has my father's badge." "Elena, run!" Another shot exploded behind them. Luca shoved her through the door onto the 4th floor and followed, slamming it shut as bullets tore through the metal. He grabbed a crash cart and jammed it beneath the handle, then turned down the corridor. This floor was dimmer, quieter. Patient rooms lined both sides, most abandoned after the lockdown. Machines beeped softly in the dark. Rain battered the windows hard enough to sound like applause. Elena stumbled forward, tears burning down her cheeks, fury turning every breath sharp. Luca reached for her. She slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me." He stopped. "You almost got killed. I almost got answers. You almost got shot in the head. At least then I wouldn't have to wonder which of you destroyed my family." His face changed. Not much, just enough. Pain moved behind his eyes and was gone before she could understand it. "I didn't know about your mother." Elena laughed, bitter and shaking. "You expect me to believe that?" "No." "Good. But it's true. Truth from a Moretti. That's new." His jaw tightened. The stairwell door rattled behind them. Luca glanced at it, then down the hall. "We need to keep moving." "No." "Elena." "No." Her voice broke out of her, louder than the alarms. "I am done being dragged through this hospital like some helpless thing you decided belongs to you." He went still. The words hung between them. "Belongs to you." For 1 second, something dark and possessive crossed Luca's face. Then he buried it. "You don't belong to me." "Then let me go." "I can't, because I matter." His silence cut deeper than any answer. Elena backed away from him. "What does that mean?" Luca looked toward the stairwell again. Adrian's men were seconds away. "Elena, what does it mean?" He walked toward her slowly, not like a predator this time, but like a man approaching a wounded animal that might still bite. "Your father hid the ledger before he died. I don't have it." "I know. Then why are they hunting me?" "Because they think he left you the key." Elena shook her head. "I don't know anything about a key." Luca's gaze dropped. "Dohernik." Elena's hand moved instinctively to the small silver pendant beneath her scrub collar. Her father's last gift. A thin oval locket she never took off. Inside was nothing but a faded photograph of him holding her as a child. Or that was what she had always believed. Luca's eyes darkened. Elena's fingers closed around it. "No." The stairwell door slammed hard behind them. Luca stepped closer. "Listen to me very carefully. No. That necklace is the reason everyone in this hospital is dying tonight." Her chest caved inward. The door behind them buckled. "Elena," Luca said, voice rough now, stripped of its calm. "Your father didn't leave you a memory." The metal door gave way. Adrian's men spilled onto the floor. Luca raised his gun. Elena clutched the pendant as the truth broke open inside her. "He left you proof." Exploded into chaos, gunfire flashing against pale hospital walls, alarms wailing, rain hammering the windows like the city itself was trying to break in. Elena crawled backward, one hand locked around the silver locket at her throat. Her father's locket, her father's proof. The thing she had worn through school dances and nursing exams, through her mother's funeral, through lonely apartments and double shifts and nights, when she had fallen asleep still in scrubs, because exhaustion was easier than grief. All those years, the truth had been touching her skin, and she had never known. "Move!" Luca shouted. Elena scrambled behind a nurse's station just as Adrian's men advanced from the stairwell. Luca took cover beside her. breathing hard now. His bandage was soaked through. Blood dripped from his fingers onto the white tile. Elena saw it. She hated that she saw it. "You're going to pass out," she said. He fired twice without looking at her. "Not tonight. You're losing too much blood. I've lost worse. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be." Another round slammed into the desk. Elena ducked, heart clawing at her ribs. Across the hall, Adrian stepped out from behind his men like none of the gunfire concerned him. He moved slowly, elegantly, her father's badge still in his hand. "Luca," he called, voice smooth over the alarms. "This is embarrassing. Bleeding all over a hospital floor for a nurse?" Luca's eyes went black. "She is not yours to touch." Elena's pulse skipped. Adrian smiled as if he had heard something delicious. "There it is." Luca said nothing. Adrian's gaze shifted to Elena behind the nurse's station. "She doesn't know, does she?" Elena's grip tightened around the locket. Luca's jaw hardened. "Shut your mouth." "Oh, I think she deserves the whole story." Adrian tilted his head. "Don't you, Elena?" Her name in his mouth made her skin crawl. "What story?" she demanded. Luca did not turn toward her, but she felt his silence. Adrian lifted her father's badge and pressed it against his chest with theatrical softness. "Your father didn't just investigate the Morettis. He made a deal with one." Elena's breath caught. Adrian's eyes gleamed. "With Luca." The world narrowed to the space between Elena and the man crouched beside her. Luca didn't deny it. Elena's voice came out thin. "What?" Luca's hand tightened around the gun. "Elena, no." She stared at him, horror rising through her. "You knew my father?" His eyes flicked to hers, and in that look, she saw the answer. Not just knew, cared. That was worse. "You were a child," Luca said quietly. "I asked if you knew him." "Yes." Her chest tightened so hard she could barely breathe. "How?" Luca's face looked carved from stone, but his voice was lower now, almost impossible to hear beneath the alarms. "He saved my life." Elena blinked. Adrian laughed from across the hall. That is one way to describe it. Luca stood suddenly and fired. One of Adrian's men dropped behind a gurney. The others scattered. Then Luca crouched again, closer to Elena now, his shoulder nearly touching hers. "When I was 22, he said, "my father ordered a hit on a federal witness. I found out the witness was a mother with 2 children. I leaked the location to a cop I thought was clean." "My father," Elena whispered. Luca nodded once. "He moved the family before my father's men arrived." Elena's mouth parted. She had spent half her life imagining the Morettis as a single shadow, one monster, with many faces. But now Luca was telling her he had betrayed his own blood to save strangers. She did not want that. She wanted him simple. Villain. Criminal. Enemy. Not this. "What happened?" she asked. Luca's eyes went distant for half a second. "My father found out." Adrian's voice floated from the corridor and punished everyone. Elena looked back at Luca. "My father died because he helped you." Luca's face changed. The answer lived in his silence before he spoke. "Yes." Elena felt the words hit something deep inside her and split it open. For 17 years, she had blamed fate. Bad weather, a drunk stranger, an accident so random it made life feel cruel and meaningless. But it had not been random. Her father had died because he was brave, because he had saved a family, because Luca Moretti had trusted him with a secret. Elena's eyes burned. "You let me believe your family murdered him. My family did murder him. But because of you." Luca flinched. It was small, almost nothing, but Elena saw it, and suddenly she understood that guilt was not new to him. It had been living beneath his skin long before she cut open his shirt in the ER. Adrian clapped slowly from the hallway. "Beautiful. Now, tell her the rest." Luca's face went cold again. Elena turned sharply. What rest? Adrian stepped forward, unconcerned by the guns trained around him. Samuel Carter didn't just hide the ledger, he copied it. Names, accounts, offshore payments, murder orders, police protection lists, political bribes. He smiled. Enough to destroy every powerful man who ever shook Vittorio Moretti's hand. Elena's fingers trembled around the locket. And my necklace? Adrian's gaze dropped to it. That pretty little thing contains the access chip. Elena's blood ran cold. Luca turned to her. Don't open it here. Tolate. Her thumb had already found the tiny seam at the edge of the oval pendant. Elena, Luca warned. She snapped it open. Inside, the faded photograph of her father smiled up at her. For a second, nothing happened. Then Elena noticed something she had never seen before. The photograph was thicker than it should have been. Her hands shook as she lifted the edge with her fingernail. A tiny black microchip slid into her palm. The hallway seemed to stop breathing. Luca stared at it. Adrian stared at it. Every gun in the corridor shifted toward Elena. Oh, sweetheart, Adrian whispered. There you are. Luca moved. Instantly. He grabbed Elena and pulled her down as gunfire tore through the nurse's station. Splinters of plastic and metal burst around them. Elena curled over the chip, protecting it with both hands. Luca's body slammed against hers. This time, he made a sound, a low, rough breath of pain. Elena looked down. Blood spread fast beneath his ribs. Not from the old wound. A new one. Luca. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes furious. I'm fine. You're shot? I noticed. Her nurse instincts overpowered everything else. She pressed her hand hard against the wound. Luca's breath hissed between his teeth. Hold pressure, she said. He looked at her with a strange intensity. You hate me. Yes, but you're saving me. I hate that too. Something almost like a smile touched his mouth. Then another bullet struck the counter above them. Elena jolted. Luca placed his hand over hers, pinning her pressure against his wound. His blood was warm between her fingers. Elena, he said, voice rough, urgent. Listen to me. That chip is more valuable than my life. Don't say that. It is. Stop talking. If Adrian gets it, he doesn't just bury your father's case. He becomes untouchable. Elena, Adrian called from the hallway, his voice sharper now, less amused. Give me the chip, and I'll let the wounded prince die quickly. Luca's eyes darkened. Elena looked down at him. For the first time, Luca Moretti did not look invincible. He looked like a man held together by rage, blood, and one last promise. What happens if I keep it? She whispered. Everyone corrupt on that ledger comes for you. And if I give it to him? Luca's gaze locked onto hers. Then your father dies for nothing. That was the answer, the only one that mattered. Elena closed her fist around the chip. Her grief went quiet. Not gone. Quiet. Like a blade being lifted from velvet. She took Luca's gun from his hand. His eyes widened slightly. Elena. She checked the chamber the way her father had taught her when she was 14, and he had believed the world was dangerous enough that even his daughter should know how to survive it. Then she rose just enough above the broken nurse's station. Adrian saw the gun and laughed. It was a mistake. Elena fired. The bullet hit the wall beside his head, close enough to make him flinch. For the first time all night, Adrian's smile disappeared. Elena's voice shook, but it did not break. That was a warning. Luca stared up at her like he was seeing someone else emerge from her skin. Adrian slowly touched the wall where the bullet had struck. Then he looked back at Elena with something darker than amusement. Interest. You really are Samuel Carter's daughter. Elena pointed the gun at him with both hands. And you're the man who knows where my father's body was really found. The corridor went silent. Even Luca's breathing changed. Adrian's expression flattened. Elena felt the truth before anyone said it. Her father had not died in a car crash. He had not died on some rain-slick road beneath flashing ambulance lights. That had been staged. A story. A cover. Adrian's eyes moved to Luca. So you didn't tell her that part either. Elena looked down at Luca. Her voice was almost soundless. What part? Luca closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, there was no coldness left. Only regret. Your father was found alive. The gun trembled in Elena's hands. No. He was alive when my men reached him. No. Luca forced himself upright against the counter, blood streaking his shirt, face tight with pain. I tried to get there first. Elena shook her head, tears falling now. No. Adrian's smile returned slowly. Oh, Luca got there, sweetheart. Luca raised the gun he had taken from the floor, aiming at Adrian with a hand that shook from blood loss. Enough. But Adrian was no longer speaking to him. He was speaking only to Elena. He held your father while he died. The fourth floor seemed to vanish beneath her. Elena saw her father's face in the old photograph. His smile, his tired eyes, the way he used to kiss the top of her head before night shifts and promise he would always come home. Always. Her knees nearly failed. Luca reached for her, but stopped himself before touching her. I was too late, he said quietly. Elena could barely see him through tears. What did he say? Luca's face broke. Not fully, not dramatically, just enough to show the wound underneath all his violence. He gave me the locket, Luca whispered. And he made me swear that if the truth ever came back for you, Adrian raised his gun. Luca raised his. Elena stood between two monsters and the ghost of her father. What? She whispered. Luca's eyes locked onto hers. He made me swear I would protect his little girl from my own family. Adrian fired. Luca shoved Elena behind him, and as the bullet tore into his shoulder, Elena heard Luca Moretti make the promise again through blood and pain. I kept my word, Samuel. Luca hit the floor hard. Elena screamed his name before she could stop herself. The sound tore out of her raw, terrified, too intimate for a man she should have hated. His shoulder struck the tile first, then his back, blood spreading beneath him in a dark, widening halo. The gun slipped from his hand and skidded toward the wall. For one awful second, the world seemed to slow. Rain lashed the hospital windows. The alarms pulsed red over Luca's face. Adrian lowered his weapon and smiled. Look at that, he said softly. The monster bleeds. Elena dropped beside Luca, both hands instantly pressing against his shoulder wound. Blood surged hot between her fingers. No, 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 she whispered, the nurse in her moving faster than the grief, faster than the fear. Stay with me. Luca's eyes opened halfway. Even now, half conscious and bleeding out, he looked at Adrian instead of her. Run, he rasped. Elena stared at him. Shut up. His mouth twitched like he wanted to smile but didn't have the strength. Adrian stepped closer. Elena, he said almost gently, you've made your point. You're brave. Your father would be proud. Now give me the chip. Elena's fist tightened around the tiny black microchip. It felt impossibly small. Too small to hold 17 years of lies. Too small to be worth all this blood. Too small to be the reason her father had died. Her mother had been silenced. Her hospital had turned into a battlefield. And Luca Moretti lay beneath her hands like a ruined king. Luca's fingers weakly closed around her wrist. Don't. She looked down at him. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, the wound in his ribs bleeding again beneath the torn bandage. His shoulder was worse. The bullet had gone deep, and the blood loss was stacking too fast. Even a man like Luca could not command his body forever. Elena knew the truth before she admitted it. If she kept fighting here, he would die. And if Luca died, she would not make it out of the hospital alive. Adrian seemed to read her calculation. There she is, he murmured. The smart girl. Elena lifted her eyes to him. I'll give you the chip. Luca's grip tightened weakly. No, but he leaves alive, Elena said. Adrian laughed. Sweetheart, you are not in a position to bargain. Elena pressed harder into Luca's wound, making him inhale sharply through his teeth. No, she said, her voice shaking but clear. You are not in a position to waste time. If Luca dies here, his men tear this city apart looking for you. If I die here, whatever else my father hid goes public. Adrian's smile faded. Elena saw it. A flicker. Tiny, but enough. She had hit something real. I don't know what else he left me, she lied. But I know my father. He never trusted one hiding place. If this chip goes dark because I disappear, someone will receive the rest. Luca's eyes shifted to her, pain-glazed, impressed. Adrian studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled again. Slower this time. You're learning quickly. I had violent teachers. Luca exhaled something that might have been a laugh if it hadn't broken into a cough. Elena looked down instantly. Don't move. You're lying, he whispered. Probably. His eyes held hers. For a second, the gunfire, the blood, the burning corridor disappeared. There was only his hand around her wrist, only the pressure of her palm against his wound, only the terrible knowledge that this man had been carrying her father's last promise like a chain around his throat for 17 years. She wanted to hate him. She needed to hate him. But hatred was clean, and nothing about Luca was clean. Adrian raised his gun toward Luca's head. Chip. Now. Elena slowly lifted her bloody hand. The microchip rested between her fingertips. Adrian's eyes locked on it. Behind him, two of his men moved closer, weapons trained on her. Elena's heart pounded once, twice. Then the lights went out. Total darkness swallowed the 4th floor. Elena didn't scream this time. Luca moved like death itself had lent him strength. His arm shot up, grabbed Elena by the waist, and yanked her down as the corridor exploded with gunfire. Muzzle flashes lit the dark in violent bursts. Adrian shouted. Men cursed. Glass shattered. Someone screamed from the far end of the hall. Then another sound cut through the chaos. A deep, mechanical roar. The service elevator doors at the end of the corridor forced themselves open. Black tactical lights sliced through the darkness. Luca's men. They poured onto the floor like shadows with guns. Elena saw only fragments in the flashing light black suits, cold faces, weapons raised, red laser dots sweeping the corridor. The air filled with controlled violence, not panic. Adrian's men fired wildly. Luca's men answered with terrifying precision. Her hand closed around Elena's shoulder. She turned sharply, raising Luca's gun with shaking hands. A massive man in a black coat froze. Easy, he said. I'm with him. Elena did not lower the gun. The man's gaze dropped to Luca bleeding on the floor, and his face changed. Boss? Luca tried to push himself up. Failed. The man crouched instantly beside him. Stay down. Luca's voice was barely a breath. Get her out. Luca, Elena snapped. You are not giving orders while actively bleeding through half your body. The black-coated man looked at her, as if no one had ever spoken to Luca Moretti like that and lived. Luca's eyes flicked to Elena. Even dying, he had the nerve to look amused. Doctor, the man called over his shoulder. A woman, in a dark grey suit, rushed forward carrying a trauma kit. Not hospital staff. Her hair was pulled into a sleek bun, her expression calm, her hands already gloved. Elena started. You brought your own doctor? Luca's voice was faint. I have trust issues. No kidding. The woman knelt beside him and cut open what remained of his shirt with quick clinical movements. Her eyes moved over the wounds. 2 gunshot wounds, heavy blood loss, possible internal bleeding. We need extraction now. Elena pushed her hands back onto Luca's ribs. Pressure here. Shoulder wound is still active. He needs blood, imaging, surgical repair. The doctor looked at her once. Sharp. Assessing. Then nodded. You're the nurse. Elena almost laughed. Apparently, that was what she was now. Not Elena. Not daughter. Not target. The nurse. Adrian's voice rose from the darkness. Luca. The gunfire slowed. Elena turned. Adrian stood near the stairwell, one of his men shielding him. Blood ran from a cut above his brow, but he was smiling again. His eyes found Elena. Then her empty fingers. His smile disappeared. Because the microchip was gone. Elena's stomach tightened. She looked down. Luca's hand was closed. Barely, but closed. He had taken it during the blackout. Adrian saw it too. His face twisted with rage. Kill them both. The corridor erupted again. Luca's men formed a wall around them. The black-coated man lifted Luca with another guard, but Luca's hand shot out and grabbed Elena's scrub top with surprising strength. She comes with me. Elena stiffened. No, she does not. His eyes opened. Dark. Commanding. Bleeding or not. The room seemed to bend toward him. Yes, he said. Elena leaned close, fury burning through fear. I am not your property. His gaze softened just enough to make her angrier. No, he whispered. You're my responsibility. I didn't ask for that. Your father did. The words hit with cruel precision. Elena stepped back as if slapped. Luca's hand fell from her scrub top, but his eyes stayed on her. Behind them, Adrian's men were being forced toward the stairwell. Luca's men controlled the corridor now, but the hospital was still burning with alarms, bodies, sirens that could finally be heard somewhere outside. Police would arrive. Real police. Corrupt police. Men paid by the names inside that chip. Elena looked at the blood on her hands. Luca's blood. Her hospital's blood. Her old life was ending whether she agreed to it or not. The black-coated man turned to her. Miss Carter, we have to leave now. Elena looked at Luca. Where? No one answered. That was answer enough. They moved fast. 2 guards carried Luca toward the service elevator. The doctor kept pressure on his shoulder. Elena walked beside them, because every instinct in her refused to leave a critically wounded patient, even if that patient was the head of Chicago's most feared Mafia family. Or maybe because the patient was Luca. She hated that possibility. The elevator descended into the belly of the hospital, past floors locked down and flickering, past the life she understood. Elena watched the numbers drop in red light, each one feeling like a countdown to something she could never undo. Luca's eyes were closed. His face had gone dangerously pale. Elena reached for his wrist. His pulse was weak but steady. The doctor noticed. You care about him. Elena didn't look up. I care about people not dying on my shift. That's not what I said. Elena's eyes lifted. The woman held her gaze without fear. I don't know you, Elena said coldly. No, the doctor replied. But I know him. Luca's eyes opened slightly. Don't. The doctor ignored him. For 17 years, your name was the only civilian name under his private protection file. Elena went still. What? Luca's jaw tightened. Enough, Mara. Dr. Mara Vale pressed gauze harder into his wound. You are bleeding out. Save the intimidation for after surgery. The elevator doors opened into an underground service tunnel. Cold air rushed in. The tunnel stretched beneath the hospital, lit by harsh white utility lights. Black SUVs waited near a loading bay with engines running. Men moved with quiet efficiency, checking corners, opening doors, speaking into earpieces. This was not an escape. It was an operation. Elena stopped walking. What private protection file? Luca looked at her from between the men carrying him. You were watched from a distance. Her stomach turned. For how long? He said nothing. Elena's voice dropped. For how long, Luca? His eyes held hers. Since your father died. The tunnel seemed to tilt beneath her. You had people watching me? To keep you alive. You stalked my life. I protected it. You watched me bury my mother? Pain crossed his face. Yes. You watched me work double shifts, walk home alone, cry in my car after rent notices. You watched all of that and did nothing. His silence was worse than any excuse. Elena stepped toward him, shaking with anger. You could have told me the truth. I couldn't. You mean you wouldn't? His eyes darkened. I mean every person I loved was used against me until I stopped loving people out loud. The words hit harder than she wanted them to, because there was no performance in them, no seduction, no dominance, just a fact, buried deep and ugly. For 1 second, Elena saw him not as a mafia boss, not as her father's burden, but as a boy raised in a house where affection was evidence and mercy was weakness. Then the moment vanished, because he was still the man who had watched her suffer from the shadows. You don't get to make yourself noble, she whispered. I'm not noble. Good. We agree. Mara interrupted, voice sharp. We need him in the car now. The men moved toward the nearest SUV. Elena stepped back. I'm not going with you. Every guard in the tunnel stilled. Even Mara looked up. Luca's eyes opened fully. Elena. No. Her voice trembled, but she stood her ground. I am done being dragged through doors and elevators and blood because men with guns keep deciding what happens to me. The black-coated man said carefully, Miss Carter, Adrian's men are still in the building. Then give me a phone. I'll call someone. Luca laughed once. It was low and bitter. There is no one safe to call. My friend Maya, already extracted. Elena froze. What? Luca looked to the black-coated man. The man nodded. Your friend is alive. We moved her out through pediatrics with 2 staff members. She's under protection. Elena's throat tightened. You had someone follow her? I had someone save her, Luca said. She hated him. She hated that relief. Almost knocked her knees out from under her. Mara slammed the medical kit shut. He has maybe 15 minutes before this becomes a very different conversation. Elena looked at Luca's blood dripping onto the concrete floor, then at the SUVs, then at the hospital tunnel stretching behind her, filled with smoke and sirens and men who wanted her dead. There was no good choice, only degrees of captivity. Elena walked to the SUV and climbed in. Luca watched her with something unreadable in his eyes. Don't mistake this for trust, she said. I wouldn't dare. They loaded him beside her. The doors slammed shut. The SUV surged forward. Rain swallowed the city above them. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Elena sat rigid in the back seat. Luca stretched across the leather seat beside her, while Mara worked over him with ruthless focus. The interior smelled of blood, antiseptic, gunpowder, and expensive cologne. The absurdity of it nearly broke her. This morning, Elena had eaten instant oatmeal standing over her kitchen sink because she was late for work. Now she was in a bulletproof SUV with a mafia boss bleeding beside her, holding a secret that powerful men would kill to erase. Her phone was gone. Her hospital was behind her. Her father's death was no longer a memory. It was a war. Luca's hand shifted weakly. Something small dropped into Elena's lap. The microchip. She stared at it. Then at him. Why give it back? His eyes were half closed, his voice barely above a whisper. Because it was never mine. Mara glanced at him. Stop talking. Luca ignored her. Your father trusted me once. It cost him everything. Elena's fingers curled around the chip. And now? His gaze found hers. The darkness in his eyes was endless, but beneath it was something raw. Now I trust you. The words settled between them like a dangerous touch. Elena looked away first. Outside the tinted window, Chicago blurred into rain and neon. Police lights flashed in the distance, but the SUV did not slow. It moved through the city like the city belonged to it. Maybe it did. They crossed the river, and entered a district Elena had only seen from far away: old stone mansions behind iron gates, private security posts, streets too quiet for the violence that paid for them. The SUV turned through a black gate that opened before they reached it. Elena started. The Moretti estate rose from the rain like a fortress pretending to be a home. Massive limestone walls, tall arched windows glowing gold, iron balconies, guards at every entrance, security cameras tucked beneath carved stone angels. A place built for beauty, wealth, and war. Elena's stomach tightened. No. Luca's eyes opened. This is the safest place in Chicago. For you. For us. There is no us. Something passed over his face. Not surprise. Not anger. Recognition. Like he had expected the blade and accepted it. The SUV stopped beneath a covered entrance. Doors opened. Men rushed forward with a stretcher. Mara took command instantly. Surgical suite. Now. Elena stepped out into the rain-cooled night and found herself surrounded by guards who would not meet her eyes. The estate doors opened. Warm light spilled across the stone steps. Inside, the mansion was impossibly quiet. Dark wood, marble floors, oil paintings of dead Morettis staring down from gilded frames. A sweeping staircase curved toward the second floor. Everything smelled faintly of leather, smoke, and old money. Elena stood dripping blood and rain onto the polished floor. Luca was carried past her. His hand reached out once. Not grabbing, not commanding, just reaching. Elena looked at it, then at his face. His eyes were open, fixed on her, fighting unconsciousness with pure will. Stay, he said. It should have sounded like an order. It didn't. It sounded like the last word of a man afraid he would wake up and find her gone. Elena hated what it did to her. Mara's voice cut in. I need assistance. Elena turned. What? You're a trauma nurse. I need hands that don't shake. Elena almost laughed. My hands are literally covered in his blood. Good. Then you already know where the problem is. Luca's stretcher disappeared through a set of double doors down the hall. Elena stood frozen. Every rational part of her screamed to run. Run before the doors locked. Run before this mansion became a cage. Run before Luca Moretti stopped being a wounded patient and became the man who could ruin what was left of her life. Then she looked down at the microchip in her palm. Her father's truth. Her mother's silence. Luca's blood. She closed her fist around it and followed Mara into the surgical suite. The room was nothing like the mansion outside. Bright white lights, stainless steel trays, monitors, blood bags, surgical instruments laid out with military precision. A private operating room hidden inside a Mafia estate. Luca lay beneath the lights, stripped of his power by anesthesia prep and blood loss. Without the coat, without the gun, without the men flinching at his name, he looked younger. Still dangerous. Still beautiful. But human. Elena washed her hands at the sink until Luca's blood thinned pink and disappeared down the drain. It did not feel like enough. Mara handed her gloves. Pressure on the rib wound while I extract the shoulder bullet. Elena took them. For the next hour, there was no Mafia. No ledger. No father. No Adrian. Only blood pressure, suction, gauze, sutures, clamps, breathing, pulse. Only Elena's training. Only Luca, refusing to die. At one point, his heart rate dropped. Mara's war. Elena leaned over him, pressing harder against the wound. Don't you dare, she whispered. Mara worked faster. The monitor stuttered. Elena's throat tightened. Luca, don't you dare make me save your life twice and then die in this ridiculous mansion. The monitor steadied. Mara looked at her. Elena pretended not to notice. When it was finally over, Luca was alive. Barely. Mara removed her gloves and exhaled. He'll need rest, blood, monitoring, and for once in his life, obedience. Elena stared at Luca's unconscious face. Good luck with that. Mara's mouth curved faintly. Then, the doors opened. A woman entered. Older, elegant, severe. Her silver hair was twisted into a perfect knot. Her black dress looked more suited for a funeral than a midnight surgery. A diamond cross rested at her throat. The guards outside bowed their heads. Elena knew power when she saw it. This woman did not need a gun. "Elena Carter," she said. Elena straightened slowly. "Yes." The woman's gaze moved over her bloody scrubs, her exhausted face, the locket at her throat. Then to Luca. "My son always did have a weakness for doomed promises." Elena's chest tightened. "Your son?" The woman's eyes returned to hers. "Isabella Moretti, Luca's mother." Elena felt the room cool around her. Isabella stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "You look like Samuel." Elena's fingers curled. "Did you know him?" A shadow crossed Isabella's face. "I knew what my husband did to him." The air changed. Mara went still beside the surgical tray. Elena's heart began to pound. Isabella looked at Luca lying unconscious under the white lights. "My son has spent 17 years trying to pay for a sin he did not commit." Elena swallowed. "And you?" Isabella's eyes met hers. "I spent 17 years making sure the people who committed it remained afraid." For the first time that night, Elena saw something in Luca's mother that did not feel like wealth or elegance. It felt like vengeance. Isabella reached into the pocket of her dress and removed a small black envelope. She held it out. Elena did not take it. "What is that?" "The reason Adrian attacked tonight." Elena looked at the envelope, then at Luca, then back at Isabella. "I thought he wanted the chip." "He does." Isabella's voice lowered. "But not because of your father's ledger." Elena's blood chilled. Isabella stepped close enough that only Elena could hear her next words. "Because the chip does not just prove who killed Samuel Carter." Elena's fingers closed around the envelope. Isabella's eyes sharpened. "It proves who Luca Moretti really belongs to." Elena stared at the black envelope in Isabella Moretti's hand. For a moment, the surgical suite disappeared around her. The bright white lights, the smell of blood and antiseptic, the soft beep of Luca's heart monitor, Mara cleaning instruments at the steel tray, the rain tapping against the tall windows beyond the private operating room. All of it fell away beneath one sentence. "It proves who Luca Moretti really belongs to." Elena's fingers tightened around the envelope, but she didn't open it. "What does that mean?" Isabella looked at her son lying unconscious beneath the surgical lights. For the first time since entering the room, the older woman's elegance fractured. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to call it weakness, but Elena saw it. The slight tremor in her hand, the way her throat moved before she spoke. "The Moretti family is built on blood," Isabella said, "but not always the blood people think." Elena's heart beat harder. Mara went silent behind her. Even the guards outside the door seemed to stop moving. Elena looked down at Luca. His face was pale, his dark lashes resting against skin drained of color. Without his coat, without his gun, without the terrifying force of his stare, he looked almost young, almost innocent. But Elena knew better. Innocence didn't survive inside men like Luca. It was either buried or stolen. She opened the envelope. Inside was a single old photograph and a folded hospital record. The photograph was faded at the edges, taken in what looked like a private maternity ward. A younger Isabella sat in a hospital bed, face pale, hair loose around her shoulders. In her arms was a newborn, wrapped in white. Beside her stood Vittorio Moretti, Luca's father. Elena recognized him from news archives and whispered stories. Tall, severe, beautiful in the way marble statues were beautiful. Cold, untouchable, dead now, but still filling the room with his shadow. But it was not Vittorio that made Elena's breath stop. It was the man standing at the edge of the photograph, younger, softer, wearing a wrinkled shirt and a tired smile. Detective Samuel Carter, her father. Elena's knees weakened. "No." Isabella said nothing. Elena unfolded the hospital record with shaking hands. The document was old, yellowing. The ink slightly faded. Patient, Isabella Ricci Moretti. Birth record, mâle enfant. Time of birth. No father listed on the official line. Then, beneath it, handwritten in a doctor's cramped script, a notation had been scratched through so aggressively it had nearly torn the paper. Biological paternity disputed. Private sample retained. Elena looked up slowly. Her mouth had gone dry. What is this? Isabella's eyes stayed on Luca. The beginning of every lie. Elena shook her head. No, you are not saying what I think you are saying. I am saying Vittorio Moretti raised Luca as his heir, because he needed the world to believe Luca was his blood. Elena's voice dropped to almost nothing. And he wasn't? Isabella's silence spread through the room like smoke. Elena's eyes moved back to the photograph. Her father, beside Isabella. Her father in a room with the Morettis. Her father close enough to a newborn Luca that the baby's tiny hand was curled around his finger. A strange ringing filled her ears. Why was my father there? Isabella closed her eyes for one brief second. Because Samuel Carter was the only good man I ever loved. The words did not land at first. They hovered above Elena. Impossible. Absurd. Cruel. Then they struck. Her hand flew to her mouth. No. Isabella's face remained composed, but her eyes shone. Yes. Elena stepped back from her. The photo slipped in her hand. Mara moved as if to steady her, then stopped. Elena looked at Luca again. Luca Moretti, the man who had saved her life, the man who had carried her father's promise for 17 years, the man whose blood was still drying beneath her fingernails. No, Elena whispered. No, that would mean... Isabella finished it for her. Luca is Samuel Carter's son. The room tilted. Elena grabbed the edge of the surgical table to keep herself standing. The monitor beeped steadily beside Luca, cruelly calm, as if the machine had not just watched her entire world rearrange itself. Her father's son, Luca, not Vittorius, not Moretti blood, not the heir by birth, Payan, Samuel Carter's son. Elena looked at Isabella in horror. Then Luca is my... No. Isabella's voice sharpened, fast and firm. No, Elena Froze. Isabella stepped closer. You and Luca do not share blood. Elena's breath fractured. What? Samuel was Luca's father, Isabella said. But Samuel was not yours by blood. Elena stared at her. The second blow came faster than the first. Harder, crueler. What did you say? Isabella's eyes softened with something Elena did not want. Pity. Samuel Carter adopted you when you were 6 months old. Elena could not move, could not blink, could not understand the sentence. Adopted. The word sounded too clean for what it did. It took a life and split it open. It reached backward through every birthday, every bedtime story, every memory of her father lifting her onto his shoulders, every photograph on her mother's dresser, every time someone had said she had his stubbornness, his eyes, his heart. No, Elena said, but there was no strength in it. Isabella's voice lowered. Your mother could not have children after a medical complication. Samuel brought you home through a private adoption, arranged quietly. He loved you from the moment he saw you. That was never a lie. Elena's eyes burned. Stop. He was your father. Stop. In every way that mattered. Elena slammed her hand against the surgical table. Stop talking. The sound cracked through the room. Luca stirred faintly beneath the sheet. The monitor jumped. Mara moved to check him, but Isabella raised a hand, stopping her. Elena backed away from both of them. Her chest heaved. Her vision blurred. No more secrets, she said, her voice breaking. No more half-truths dressed up like mercy. No more dead people speaking through documents. I want the truth, all of it, right now. Isabella held her Chase. For several seconds no one spoke. Then she nodded once. Samuel and I met before I married Vittorio. I was 19. He was a young officer with nothing but principles and a terrible habit of believing people could still be saved. Elena swallowed hard. I don't want a love story. It isn't one. Isabella's mouth tightened. It is a war story. The storm outside rolled over the mansion, thunder deep enough to tremble through the windows. Isabella continued. My father owed money to Vittorio. I was the payment. A marriage contract dressed as romance. By the time Samuel found out, it was too late. Elena looked at the photograph again. Luca, as a newborn. Samuel beside Isabella. He knew Luca was his. Yes. Did Luca know? No. Elena's eyes lifted sharply. Isabella's face hardened with guilt. Not until the night Samuel died. The words seemed to pull Luca's unconscious body into the conversation. Elena looked at him. What happened that night? Isabella folded her hands in front of her, as if control could be built from posture. Samuel had spent years collecting evidence against Vittorio. Bribes, murders, trafficking routes, judges, police officers, bank accounts. He had enough to burn the family down. But then he discovered the paternity file. Elena's heart pounded. Luca's file. Yes. And Vittorio found out. Isabella nodded. Vittorio had suspected for years, but suspicion is different from proof. The moment he knew there was a record, Samuel became more than a threat to the business. He became a threat to the bloodline. Elena understood. The Moretti empire did not just depend on fear. It depended on legacy. Luca had been raised as the heir, the next king, the face of the family's future. If he was not Vittorio's son, everything could fracture. Adrian, the cousins, the old families, every man who had bowed to Luca because of the Moretti name would see him as an imposter. And Adrian knows, Elena whispered. Isabella's eyes darkened. Adrian knows enough. Not all. That is why he needs the chip. The chip has proof. The chip has everything. Elena looked down at the microchip still clenched in her palm. It felt heavier now. Not just evidence of murder, evidence of identity. Evidence that the man bleeding on the table belonged to the dead father Elena had mourned her whole life, and that Elena herself had been standing on a past built from hidden doors. Her voice came out hollow. Why would my father hide this from me? Isabella's expression softened. Because he wanted you to live. Elena laughed once, broken and bitter. Everyone keeps saying that like it makes the lying noble. It does not make it noble, Isabella said. It makes it desperate. Elena turned away. She wanted air. She wanted distance. She wanted to tear the locket from her throat and throw it across the room, but her fingers wouldn't let go. Her father's locket. Not by blood. Still her father. Still the man who had taught her how to check the back seat before getting into a car. How to keep pepper spray in her palm on late walks. How to stand straight when powerful men tried to make her feel small. Her father. Her father. The truth did not erase love, but it changed the shape of every memory. Behind her, Luca made a low sound. Elena turned instantly. His eyes were opening. Mara leaned over him. Don't move. Luca ignored her, because apparently near death had done nothing for his survival instincts. His gaze found Elena first. Always first. Elena. Her name came out rough, barely there. She stood frozen, still holding the photograph. Luca's eyes dropped to it. Something changed in his face. Recognition, then dread. He looked at Isabella. What did you do? Isabella's expression did not soften for him. I told her the truth. Luca tried to sit up. Pain slammed him back down. The monitor screamed. Mara cursed and pushed him against the table. Move again, Mara snapped, and I sedate you hard enough to make your ancestors feel it. Luca's breathing turned ragged, but his eyes stayed on Elena. You weren't supposed to find out like this. Elena walked toward him slowly. Every step felt like stepping over broken glass. You knew? His silence was enough. Of course he knew. Of course. Since when? His eyes closed briefly. The night your father died. The words struck differently now. Your father, not our father. Because Luca knew what she had not. Elena's voice trembled. You knew Samuel Carter was your father. Yes. And you knew I was adopted. Yes. And you watched me grieve him for 17 years without telling me any of it. Luca's face tightened with pain that had nothing to do with bullets. Yes. Elena nodded once. Then she slapped him. The sound cracked across the surgical suite. Mara froze. Isabella did not move. The guards outside went completely silent. Luca's head turned slightly with the force of it. Elena's Hand stung. Her heart hurt worse. Tears burned down her face. But her voice stayed low. That was for every year you let me live inside a lie. Luca slowly turned his face back to her. He did not look angry. That almost destroyed her. I deserve worse. Yes, she whispered. You do. Elena, no. You don't get to say my name like it still belongs in your mouth. His eyes flinched. Good. She wanted him to hurt. She wanted the wound to land somewhere deeper than flesh. Lucas swallowed, struggling against the medication, against blood loss, against the body that kept betraying him when his will would not. I was 22, he said hoarsely. Samuel was bleeding in my arms. He had minutes, maybe less. He gave me the locket. He told me to keep you away from the Morettis, away from the truth, away from me. Elena's breath caught. Luca's eyes held hers, dark and shattered. He said if you knew, you would come looking for answers. And if you came looking, they would kill you. Elena shook her head. So you decided for me. Yes. You took my choice. Yes. You watched from a distance and called it protection. Yes. Her voice broke. And did it ever occur to you that I would rather know the truth and be in danger than live safely inside a cage made by men? Luca's jaw tightened. No. The honesty cut. Because men like you never think cages are cages when you build them for women you want to protect. Something changed in Luca's eyes. Dark, rough, possessive, then instantly buried beneath shame. Elena saw it, and hated that her body noticed. Hated the tension that lived even here, even now, between blood and betrayal and the impossible gravity of him. She stepped back. The door to the surgical suite opened. The black-coated man entered quickly, face hard. Isabella turned. Matteo, we have a problem. Luca's eyes sharpened despite the pain. Adrian? Matteo nodded. He escaped the hospital. Elena's stomach sank. Mara swore under her breath. Isabella's face became stone. How many with him? 6 confirmed. Maybe more. But that's not the worst of it. Thunder rolled outside. Matteo looked at Elena, then at the microchip in her hand. He released a video. Luca's expression went lethal. What video? Matteo hesitated. Isabella said sharply. Show us. Matteo pulled a phone from his coat and placed it on the steel counter. The screen lit up. A video played. Adrian stood somewhere dark, rain glistening behind him, his face bruised but smiling. Behind him hung the Moretti crest, painted in red across a concrete wall. His voice filled the room. Tonight, Luca Moretti betrayed his bloodline for a nurse. Elena felt cold spread through her body. The video cut to grainy hospital footage. Luca pulling Elena behind him. Luca carrying her through the corridor. Luca ordering his men to extract her. Then Adrian appeared again. The city should know why. The next image appeared. The old photograph. Isabella, in the hospital bed. Samuel Carter at her side. Baby Luca in her arms. Isabella inhaled sharply. Luca went utterly still. Adrian's voice continued, smooth and venomous. The man ruling the Moretti empire is not Vittorio Moretti's son. The words seemed to detonate in the room. He is the bastard son of a dead cop. Elena watched Luca's face. No anger at first. No shock. just a stillness so complete it was terrifying. Adrian smiled on the screen. And the nurse he's protecting? Elena Carter, the adopted daughter of that same dead cop. The girl wearing the key to the ledger that can burn us all. The video cut again. A photo of Elena from her hospital ID. Her full name, her apartment address, her work schedule, her mother's obituary. Her entire life dragged into the open. Elena's blood turned to ice. Matteo quickly shut the video off. Too late. The damage was already inside the room. Mara whispered. God. Isabella looked at Luca. Luca looked only at Elena. The world had narrowed to that. What happens now? Elena asked. No one answered quickly. That frightened her more than if they had. Finally, Isabella spoke. Now every Moretti loyalist who believes blood is power will turn on Luca. Matteo added. And every corrupt name on that ledger will want you dead before the chip is decrypted. Elena swallowed. So Adrian just painted a target on both of us. Luca's voice came low from the table. No. Everyone looked at him. He forced himself to breathe through pain. His face pale but his eyes burning. He declared war. Isabella stepped closer to him. You are in no condition to fight. Luca's mouth curved faintly. It was not a smile. It was something colder. I don't need condition. I need loyalty. Matteo's face tightened. That's the question, boss. Luca's gaze shifted to him. Matteo held it. Loyal but honest. Half the captains are already demanding proof. Some are asking whether Adrian has the rightful claim. Isabella's eyes flashed. Adrian has no claim. He has Vittorio's blood, Matteo said quietly. That may be enough for some. Luca said nothing. Elena understood then. Adrian had not just attacked her. He had not just exposed Luca. He had split the empire, and the split would drown the city in blood. Mara checked Lucas IV. He needs to rest. Luca ignored her again. Bring the captains. Isabella's voice sharpened. Absolutely not. Bring them here. You will not hold court from an operating table. Luca's eyes cut to hers. I will hold court from a coffin before I let Adrian take my city. The room went silent. Elena hated the power in his voice. Hated that even wounded, even exposed, even stripped of his name, he could make people remember why they feared him. But she also saw the cost. His hand trembled beneath the sheet. His pulse was too fast. His skin too pale. He was holding himself together with fury. And fury was not blood. Mara looked at Elena. Tell him. Elena blinked. What? You're the only person in this room he might actually hear. Luca's gaze snapped to Mara. Mara. She didn't flinch. He needs 8 hours minimum before moving. If he starts bleeding internally again, I can't promise I'll stop it. Elena looked at Luca. He looked back, daring her to care. She stepped closer, hating every inch. You're not meeting anyone tonight. His eyes narrowed. You don't give orders here. No, she said. I give medical instructions, and medically, you are one arrogant decision away from bleeding into your own lungs. Matteo lowered his eyes like he was hiding amusement. Isabella's mouth barely moved, but Elena suspected she was pleased. Luca stared at Elena. You think this is funny? No. I think you're used to people letting you destroy yourself because they're too afraid to say no. His face hardened. You don't know what I'm used to. I know you're not invincible. His gaze deepened. Neither are you. No. But I'm not pretending to be. For a second, the room disappeared again. His eyes moved over her face. Slower now, reading every fracture. You should hate me. I do. You should leave. I should. But you won't. Elena's throat tightened. The truth sat between them like a loaded gun. She wanted to leave. But outside this mansion, Adrian had exposed her address, her name, her past, her father, the chip. There was no outside anymore. There was only the storm, and the monster bleeding in front of her, who might be the only person dangerous enough to stand between her and it. Elena leaned closer. I'm staying for the truth. Not for you. Luca's eyes held hers. Leave better. Her breath caught. The door opened again before she could answer. A young guard stepped inside, pale-faced. Mrs. Moretti, he said. Isabella turned. What? The guard swallowed. There's someone at the front gate. Matteo's hand went to his weapon. Who? The guard looked at Elena. Her friend. Elena's heart lurched. Maya? The guard nodded. She says she won't leave until she sees Elena. Elena started toward the door. Luca's voice stopped her. No. She turned slowly. If you think you are going to tell me I can't see my best friend after your family dragged her into this, it could be a trap. It's Maya. Adrian has your phone records, your contacts, your life. Elena's eyes narrowed. You don't get to use the danger you helped create as an excuse to isolate me. Luca's jaw tightened. Matteo spoke carefully. We can bring her in through the secondary entrance. Search the vehicle. Confirm identity. Elena looked at Luca. He looked back for a long moment. Then he gave one sharp nod. Do it. Elena hated the relief that moved through her. Minutes later, Maya burst into the surgical wing wearing an oversized coat over her scrubs, hair damp from rain, face streaked with tears. Elena. Elena ran to her. Maya threw her arms around her so hard it hurt. For the first time all night, Elena almost broke. Maya smelled like hospital soap and rain and something normal. Something from the life that had existed before gunfire and ledgers and Luca Moretti's blood. I thought you were dead, Maya sobbed. I'm okay. You are not okay. You're in a Mafia house. Elena laughed through tears despite everything. Yes, that part is not ideal. Maya pulled back and looked her over. You're covered in blood. Most of it isn't mine. Maya's eyes shifted past her. To Luca, on the surgical table. Fear hardened her face. You. Luca watched her silently. Maya stepped in front of Elena protectively, which would have been touching if Luca weren't half dead and surrounded by armed guards. You stay away from her. Luca said nothing. Elena touched Maya's arm. It's complicated. No. Taxes are complicated. Whatever this is criminal. Despite the nightmare, Elena almost smiled. Then Maya's expression changed. Her gaze dropped to Elena's locket. Elena, she whispered. Where did you get that? Elena van Stil. What? Maya's face drained of color. That locket. Elena's hand rose to it. My father gave it to me. Maya shook her head slowly. No. A cold thread moved down Elena's spine. Maya? Maya looked toward the door, then at the guards, then back at Elena. I've seen it before. Elena's heartbeat quickened. Where? Maya swallowed. My mother had one just like it. The room went silent. Isabella turned sharply. Mara froze. Luca's eyes opened fully. Elena stared at Maya. What are you talking about? Maya reached beneath her coat with trembling fingers and pulled a chain from around her neck. A silver uva locket, identical to Elena's. Same shape, samma vornedge, samma hiddesim. Elena could not move. Maya's voice shook. My mom always told me never to open it unless someone came looking for Samuel Carter. Isabella whispered something in Italian. Luca's face went deadly still. Elena looked from Maya's locket to her own. 2 keys. 2 daughters of dead secrets. Maya's eyes filled with fear. Elena, what is happening? Before Elena could answer, every light in the mansion went out. Darkness crashed over the room. The heart monitor screamed on backup power. Men shouted from the hallway. Then the estate gates exploded. The blast rolled through the mansion like thunder made of fire, shaking the walls, shattering glass, sending dust raining from the ceiling. Maya screamed. Elena grabbed her. Emergency red lights snapped on. Matteo yelled into his radio. Gate breach. East side. Multiple vehicles. Luca tried to rise again, ripping at the IV. Elena rushed to him, pushing him down. "Stop." His eyes were black with fury. Adrian found the second key. Elena looked at Maya. Maya clutched the locket against her chest, shaking. Outside, gunfire erupted across the Moretti estate. Isabella stepped toward the door, calm as death. "Not Adrian," she said. Luca looked at her, for the first time all night. His mother looked afraid. A voice boomed through the mansion speakers. Old, male, familiar to every Moretti in the room. Isabella went white. Luca stopped breathing. Elena turned toward the sound. The voice spoke again, smooth with age, power, and impossible resurrection. "My son." Luca's face turned to stone. The voice continued. "Did you really think a dead man couldn't come home?" Isabella whispered, "Vittorio." And from somewhere beyond the burning gates, Luca Moretti's father laughed. The laugh moved through the mansion speakers like a ghost dragging chains across marble. Elena stood frozen beside Luca's operating table, one hand gripping Maya's wrist, the other pressed against the locket at her throat. Vittorio Moretti was dead. Everyone knew that. There had been a funeral. Black cars lined for 6 city blocks, priests, politicians, judges, businessmen. Men who hated him had cried in public because they were too afraid not to. The news had called him a controversial real estate magnate. The streets had called him king. And now his voice was pouring through the walls of the Moretti estate. "My son," Vittorio said again, smooth and cruel. "You look unwell." Luca did not move, but the room changed around him. The guards who had stood like statues now looked at each other with a fear Elena had not seen even during the hospital attack. Matteo's face went pale beneath his beard. Mara's hand tightened around a surgical clamp, like it might become a weapon. Isabella Moretti stood near the door, her perfect posture broken by one trembling breath. "No," she whispered. "No, he's dead." The speakers crackled. Vittorio laughed softly. "Isabella." Still dramatic. The sound that came from Luca was not quite a growl. It was deeper, older. A sound pulled from a place in him Elena had not touched yet. "Where are you?" "Home," Vittorio replied. Where else would a father go when his house is full of traitors? Outside, gunfire erupted again, closer this time. The windows flashed white-orange as another explosion shook the east wing. The surgical lights flickered on backup power. Dust drifted down from the ceiling in pale clouds. Somewhere beyond the doors, men shouted orders in Italian and English, boots pounding over marble, radios screaming with overlapping panic. Maya clutched Elena's hand. "Elena," she whispered. "Who is that?" Elena couldn't answer, because Luca was trying to get up again. "No." Elena pushed both hands against his chest. "Do not move." His eyes cut to hers. They were not the eyes of a patient now. They were the eyes of a man who had just seen every nightmare from his childhood walk back through the door. "Get away from me." The words hit hard. Not because they were angry, because they were afraid. Elena stared at him. "I'm not leaving you bleeding on a table." "You are if you want to live." Mara shoved another syringe into his IV. "I can sedate him." Luca's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist before the plunger moved. Even half dead, he was fast enough to make every guard in the room flinch. "Do that," he said, voice low, "and I wake up to bury you." Mara's face stayed calm. "You wake up at all because of me." Elena stepped between them. "Luca." His gaze snapped back to her. For a second, something in him wavered. Not weakness, recognition. Like her voice was the one thread still tying him to the present. "Tell me what to do," Elena said. The room went silent. Luca stared at her. So did Isabella. So did Maya, horrified. Elena swallowed. "I'm not asking because I trust you. I'm asking because you know this house. You know him, and he's coming for the lockets." Luca's jaw flexed. Outside, another burst of gunfire rattled across the estate. Then the speakers hissed again. "Bring me the girls," Vittorio said. and I may let the rest of you die quickly." Maya's breath broke. Elena stepped in front of her without thinking. Luca saw it. His eyes moved from Elena to Maya's locket, then to Matteo. "Safe room." Matteo nodded immediately. "West Passage is still clear." "No," Isabella said sharply. Luca looked at her. Isabella's face had gone white, but her eyes were hard. "He knows the safe room. He built it." Luca's expression darkened. "Then the chapel tunnels." Matteo shook his head. "East Wing breach is near the chapel." Luca cursed under his breath and tried to sit again. Pain tore through him instantly. His face drained of color, and the monitor shrieked. Elena pushed him back down, furious. "You are not useful dead." His eyes locked on hers. "I'm not useful lying here. You're the only one who thinks bleeding is leadership." Matteo's mouth twitched despite the chaos. Luca shot him a look, and the amusement vanished. Isabella stepped forward. "There is another way." Luca's face hardened. "No, you don't even know what I was going to say." "Yes, I do." Elena looked between them. "What way?" Luca said. "No." Isabella ignored him. "Beneath the library, there is an old panic route. Vittorio never knew I kept access after he sealed it." Matteo frowned. "The north cellar passage." Isabella nodded. "That tunnel collapses under the carriage house." Luca snapped. "Not if you take the wine vault exit. That exit opens outside the perimeter." "Exactly." Elena understood. Outside the perimeter meant outside Luca's men. Outside protection. Outside the fortress. Maya's fingers dug into Elena's arm. "Elena, I don't like this." Elena almost laughed. There was nothing to like. The mansion shook again. This time the blast was close enough that a surgical tray crashed to the floor, instruments scattering like silver teeth. Maya screamed. Mara steadied Luca's forestand. One of the guards outside shouted, then went silent. Matteo moved to the door and listened. His face changed. "They're in the West Hall." Luca's gaze turned murderous. "Already?" Matteo chambered his weapon. "Someone let them in." Her cold silence fell. A betrayal inside the house. Of course. Elena looked at the guards. Any one of them could have opened the gate. Any one of them could be waiting to hand her and Maya over. Luca seemed to understand her thought before she finished it. "Matteo," he said. "I know." Matteo turned to the remaining guards. Guns on the floor. 2 obeyed instantly. 1 hesitated. It was less than a second. But in a room full of killers, less than a second was a confession. Matteo shot him in the knee. The guard screamed and dropped. Maya cried out. Elena flinched, but Luca didn't even blink. Matteo crossed the room, kicked away the man's gun, and pressed his weapon to the traitor's forehead. "Who bought you?" The man spat blood on the floor. "Blood belongs to blood." Luca's face went still. Vittorio's phrase. The traitor smiled through pain. "The old king is back." Matteo's finger tightened on the trigger. Luca spoke first. "Leave him." Everyone turned. Luca's eyes were colder than the steel table beneath him. "Let him crawl back to Vittorio, and tell him I'm still breathing." The traitor's smile faltered. That was Luca's real violence, Elena realized. Not the gun, the message. Mara grabbed a portable medical pack and shoved it at Elena. Pressure bandages, coagulant, pain meds. "If he tears those sutures, press here and here." Elena blinked. "What?" Mara was already disconnecting Luca from the monitor. "He's going with you." "No," Elena and Luca said at the same time. Mara looked at both of them. "Cute." "Wrong." Luca glared at her. "I slow them down." "Yes," Mara said. "But if you stay here, every loyal man stays to defend you, and the girls die in the hallway. If you move, the defense moves with you." Elena hated that it made sense. Luca hated it more. Isabella stepped beside him. "For once, let your bodyguard and your doctor do their jobs." Luca looked at his mother. The air between them was filled with years Elena did not know how to read. Then Luca said quietly, "You're coming too." Isabella smiled without warmth. "No." His expression changed. "Mother." She stepped closer, and for the first time, she touched his face. It was gentle, almost shocking. Even Luca went still. "I survived Vittorio once," she said. "You were a child then. You are not a child now." Luca's jaw clenched. "I'm not leaving you. You will leave because Elena carries Samuel's truth. Maya carries the second key, and you are the only man cruel enough to keep them alive." Elena felt the words move through her like cold water. Maya whispered, "Second key?" Isabella turned to her. "Your mother was Samuel's second witness." Maya went pale. "My mother was a school nurse. She was the hospital nurse who took the paternity sample and copied the file before Vittorio's doctor could destroy it." Maya stared at her locket like it had become a snake around her throat. "No, she never told me. She was protecting you." Maya shook her head, tears rising fast. Elena knew that look. The first moment, a life splits open. She grabbed Maya's hand. "Look at me." Maya did. Barely. "We get out first," Elena said. "Then we fall apart." Maya gave a broken laugh that turned into a sob. The surgical suite doors burst open. 2 of Vittorio's men rushed in. Matteo dropped the first before he crossed the threshold. The second fired wildly. A bullet clipped the overhead light, showering sparks across the room. Elena ducked over Luca. Luca grabbed a gun from Matteo's holster and fired from the table. The second man fell backward into the hall. Mara stared at him. "You are impossible." Luca grimaced. "Frequently." Matteo and another loyal guard lifted Luca onto a wheeled stretcher, securing him with rough efficiency. Elena grabbed the medical pack. Maya clutched both lockets in her fist, now hers and Elena's, because Elena had shoved hers into Maya's palm without thinking when the shooting started. "Keep them hidden," Elena whispered. Maya nodded, trembling. They moved. The hallway outside the surgical suite was smoke and red emergency light. Marble statues lay shattered. Blood streaked the floor. The grand Moretti mansion had become a battlefield, beautiful and ruined, like a cathedral under siege. Matteo led with 3 men. Mara stayed beside Luca. Elena and Maya moved between them. Isabella walked last. Calm. Too calm. They crossed through a narrow service corridor behind the portrait gallery. As they passed, Elena saw bullet holes punched through the painted faces of dead Morettis. One portrait hung crooked. An older man with Luca's eyes and none of his pain. Vittorio's voice returned through the speakers. "Elena Carter." Elena stopped, despite herself. Luca turned his head on the stretcher. "Don't listen." Vittorio continued. "Samuel never told you what you were before he made you his daughter." Elena's blood chilled. Maya whispered, "Keep moving." But Elena couldn't. The voice slid through the walls like poison. "Ask Luca why Samuel chose you. Ask Isabella what your adoption really cost." Luca's eyes went to Isabella. For the first time, Isabella looked away. Elena saw it. Another secret. Even now, even here. Her voice went cold. "What is he talking about?" Luca said, "Not now." Elena laughed once, sharp and broken. That is everyone's favorite answer. A bullet struck the wall above them. Matteo shouted, "Move!" They ran, down a servant's staircase, through a hidden door behind a wine cabinet, into the underground library passage. The tunnel was narrow, lined with old brick and damp stone, lit only by emergency lamps. Matteo snapped awake one by one. The sound of gunfire above became muffled thunder. For a moment, they were beneath the war, breathing, moving, bleeding. Luca's stretcher wheels rattled over uneven stone. Every jolt made his face tighten, but he refused to make a sound. Elena noticed. Of course, she noticed. She hated that part of herself. Maya walked beside her, whispering under her breath, This isn't real. This isn't real. Elena squeezed her hand. I know. No, you don't. Maya's voice broke. Elena, if my mum was part of this, if she had a key, if she knew your father. She looked at Elena, terrified. What else did she lie about? Elena had no answer. The tunnel forked. Isabella stopped. Left. Matteo frowned. Wine vault is right. Left is faster. Luca's eyes opened. No. Isabella looked at him. He stared back, breathing hard. Left leads to the old chapel crypt. Isabella said nothing. Luca's expression turned deadly. What did you do? Before Isabella could answer, the tunnel lights behind them went out one by one. Someone was coming. Slowly, deliberately. A flashlight beam appeared at the far end. Then another. Then Vittorio's voice. No longer through speakers. Real now. Close. Isabella always did choose the most dramatic exits. Everyone froze. Matteo raised his weapon. The darkness behind them filled with silhouettes. Luca strained against the stretcher straps, rage turning his face almost unrecognizable. Then Vittorio Moretti stepped into the dim light. Older than the photographs, but unmistakable. Tall, silver-haired, immaculate in a dark coat. His face lined by age but not weakened by it. His eyes were pale and cold, like winter over a grave. A dead man made flesh. Isabella whispered, "How?" Vittorio smiled. "You were so eager to bury me, my dear." I thought it rude to interrupt. His gaze moved to Luca. Something like disgust passed over his face. My stolen heir. Luca's voice was quiet. "You should have stayed dead." "And miss seeing you crawl for a nurse?" Vittorio's eyes shifted to Elena. They moved over her face with surgical precision. "I see why Samuel kept you. Pretty thing. Fragile enough to inspire loyalty. Disposable enough to hide evidence inside." Luca's hand tightened around the gun beneath the blanket. Elena stepped forward before he could raise it. Maya grabbed her sleeve. "Elena." But Elena was done being discussed like an object men had passed between secrets. She faced Vittorio. "What was I?" The tunnel went silent. Vittorio smiled. "Elena?" Luca warned. "No." Her voice shook, but she held Vittorio's gaze. "He said Samuel chose me for a reason." "What was I?" Vittorio looked amused. "Leverage." The word hit like ice. Elena could not move. Vittorio continued softly. "You were the daughter of a woman who knew too much, and a man who owed too much. Samuel took you to keep your mother alive. Noble, really. Stupid, but noble." Elena's throat closed. "My birth mother? Dead," Vittorio said casually. "Most inconvenient women are eventually." Luca fired. The shot cracked through the tunnel. Vittorio's shoulder jerked back, blood darkening his coat. His men opened fire. Chaos exploded underground. Matteo shoved Elena and Maya behind a stone pillar. Mara dropped over Luca's stretcher as bullets struck the brick walls. Dust and sparks filled the air. Isabella pulled a small pistol from beneath her dress and fired with the calm precision of a woman who had been waiting 17 years. Vittorio staggered, then laughed. Actually laughed. "Still emotional, Luca?" Luca tore one strap loose with pure fury, raising his gun despite the blood soaking through his bandages. Elena saw his sutures split, saw fresh blood bloom, saw him choosing revenge over survival. She crawled through the gunfire and grabbed his wrist. His eyes snapped to her. Wild. "Let go." "No. He killed Samuel, and he'll kill you too if you keep trying to die for ghosts." Vittorio's men pushed forward. Matteo shouted for the wine vault exit. Isabella fired again, covering them. Then a bullet struck her. She gasped and fell against the tunnel wall. Luca's face emptied. "Mother!" Isabella slid down the stone, one hand pressed to her side. Vittorio watched her fall, expression unreadable. "Elena," Isabella said, breathless. Elena ran to her. Luca shouted her name. but she ignored him. Isabella grabbed Elena's hand and shoved something into it. A third locket, blackened silver, older than the others. The final key. Isabella whispered. Elena started. What? Isabella's fingers tightened painfully. Samuel didn't trust 2 witnesses. He trusted 3. Maya knelt beside them, crying. Who is the third? Isabella's eyes lifted past Elena, toward Luca, then toward Vittorio, the son. Luca went still. Vittorio's face changed for the first time. True. Isabella smiled through blood. Samuel left the last key with Luca before he died. But Luca was never meant to open it alone. Elena looked at the 3 lockets in her hand. Hers, Maya's, Isabella's. 3 keys, 3 lives built around one buried truth. The tunnel shook as another explosion thundered above them. Matteo grabbed Luca's stretcher. We have to go. Vittorio raised his gun. Not at Luca, at Elena. Luca saw it. He tore free from the stretcher and threw himself between them. The shot hit him high in the chest. Elena screamed. Luca collapsed into her arms. Too heavy, too warm. Blood soaking through everything. Matteo fired wildly, forcing Vittorio back. Mara dragged Luca toward the wine vault passage. Elena held on to him, sobbing now, no longer pretending hatred was enough to protect her from what she felt. Luca's eyes opened, barely. Elena. Don't talk. His hand found hers. He pressed something cold into her palm. A ring, heavy, black, engraved with the Moretti crest. The last key, he whispered. Vittorio roared from the darkness. Do not let her leave. Maya pulled Elena up. Matteo and Mara dragged Luca through the vault door. Isabella stayed behind, bleeding against the wall, gun raised in both hands. Luca saw her. No. Isabella smiled at him. For the first time, she looked like a mother. Live as Samuel's son. Then she fired at the ceiling. The old tunnel supports shattered. Stone cracked. The passage collapsed between them and Vittorio, swallowing Isabella in dust, fire, and darkness. Luca's scream tore through the vault. Elena grabbed his face with both hands. Look at me. His eyes found hers, broken and burning. Behind them, the exit doors burst open to the storm outside. Rain swept over Elena's face as Matteo pulled them into the night. Sirens screamed in the distance. The Moretti estate burned behind them. In Elena's palm, the 3 lockets and Luca's ring pulsed like a death sentence. And somewhere, beneath the collapsed tunnel, Vittorio Moretti's voice rose one last time through the smoke. This city will drown before I let a Carter girl take my throne. Rain hit Elena's face so hard it felt like the sky was trying to wake her from a nightmare. But Luca's blood was real. It soaked through her scrubs, hot beneath the cold rain, spreading across her arms as Matteo and Mara dragged him through the ruined garden behind the Moretti estate. Flames climbed the east wing in the distance. Smoke rolled across the lawns. Gunfire still cracked somewhere behind them, muffled by thunder and the screaming alarms. Elena stumbled beside Luca, one hand pressed to the wound high in his chest. Stay with me, she said, her voice breaking. Do you hear me? Stay with me. Luca's eyes fluttered open. Even dying, he looked irritated by weakness. Stop yelling. Elena almost sobbed with relief. I will yell as much as I want if you keep bleeding on me. His mouth moved faintly. It might have been a smile. Then his eyes rolled back. No. Elena pressed harder. No, Luca. You do not get to do this. Mara shoved open the doors of a waiting armored SUV near the carriage house. Inside. Now. Matteo lifted Luca with another guard and laid him across the back seat. Elena climbed in after him without thinking. Maya followed, shaking, clutching the lockets to her chest. Mara slammed herself into the seat beside Luca and immediately tore open his shirt. The SUV shot forward. Behind them, The Moretti estate burned like a palace being punished by God. Elena looked through the rear window only once. She saw the flames, the shattered gates, the smoke swallowing the place where Isabella had disappeared. And she saw Luca's face, pale and empty, as if some part of him had remained buried under that tunnel with his mother. Mara's voice snapped through the car. Elena. Pressure. Elena turned back, instantly. Her hands found the wound again. The bullet had missed the heart by a miracle or cruelty, but he was losing blood too fast. Mara worked with terrifying focus, packing gauze, injecting medication, barking orders into a secure phone. Get the safe clinic ready. Full surgical prep. Blood on arrival. And call every captain still loyal enough to answer. Matteo drove like the road belonged to him. Maybe it did. Maya sat frozen across from Elena, her face wet with rain and tears. Elena, she whispered, your hand. Elena looked down. She was still holding Luca's ring. The black Moretti crest was slick with blood in her palm. Beside it lay the 3 lockets. A locket, Maya's locket, Isabella's final key. 4 pieces of a truth powerful enough to make dead men rise and empires burn. Elena's fingers closed around them. For years she had thought survival meant staying small. Pay rent. Work shifts. Avoid trouble. Keep her head down. Do not ask why her mother locked doors at night. Do not open the locket. Do not dig into the ache beneath every family story that never made sense. But small things were easier to bury. Her father had been buried. Her mother had been silenced. Maya's mother had hidden a key inside a necklace and taught her daughter fear disguised as caution. Luca had been raised as a weapon by a man who had stolen his name, his bloodline, and his mother's freedom. And Elena was done being the quiet girl men, protected by lying to her. She looked at Matteo, who still follows Luca. Matteo glanced at her through the rearview mirror. Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one. Mara pressed harder into Luca's wound. His captains are split. Some will stay loyal because they fear him. Some will turn because they fear Vittorio more. Some will wait to see who bleeds first. Elena looked down at Luca. His breathing was shallow. A king without a throne. A monster without armor. A man who had spent 17 years protecting her from a truth that had finally come to collect them both. Maya's voice trembled. What do we do? Elena did not answer immediately. She stared at the lockets in her bloody hand, then at Luca's ring. The Moretti crest was heavy, ugly, powerful. A symbol men had killed for. A symbol men would follow. A symbol Vittorio believed belonged only to blood. Elena slid the ring onto her finger. It was too large. It nearly slipped past her knuckle, but she curled her hand into a fist and held it there. Matteo saw it in the mirror. His eyes sharpened. Mara looked up slowly. Maya stared at her. Elena, Maya whispered. What are you doing? Elena looked at the burning mansion, disappearing behind them. Then at Luca. What everyone keeps doing for me, she said. Making a choice before someone else makes it for us. The safe clinic was hidden beneath a private church on the south side. From the outside, it looked abandoned. Boarded windows, brick stained by years of rain, a rusted iron cross above the door. Inside, it was war. Men with weapons moved through candlelit halls. Medical staff rushed down narrow stairs. Monitors glowed in an underground operating room beneath old stone arches. Maps of Chicago covered one wall. Phone lines rang non-stop. Screens showed security feeds, burning streets, police movements, and news helicopters circling the Moretti estate. The city already knew, not the truth, but enough. A Mafia war had begun. They rushed Luca into surgery. This time, Elena was not allowed inside. Mara blocked her at the door. You're shaking. I can help. You're running on shock. I said I can help, and I said no. Mara's voice softened just enough to hurt. If he dies, you do not need his blood on your hands twice tonight. Elena's throat closed, the doors shut, and suddenly there was nothing to do but stand there with blood drying on her skin, while Luca disappeared beneath white lights again. Maya wrapped both arms around herself. Elena, I'm fine. No, you're not. I don't have time not to be. That was when Matteo approached. He was still rain-soaked, blood on his collar, gun at his side. Around him, Luca's remaining men watched Elena with open suspicion. No, not just suspicion. Calculation. She was not one of them. She was a nurse in ruined scrubs wearing their wounded boss's ring. A Carter girl, holding Moretti secrets. A liability. A symbol. A threat. Matteo stopped in front of her. The captains are gathering. Elena's pulse tightened. Here, in 15 minutes. Why? Because they want proof Luca is alive. They want proof Vittorio is alive. They want to know who has the keys. His gaze dropped to her fist. And they want to know why you're wearing his ring. Maya stepped closer. She doesn't have to explain anything to criminals. A few men in the room turned. Matteo looked at Maya, then back at Elena. She does if she wants them not to tear this place apart looking for what she has. Elena breathed slowly. Her body wanted to collapse. Her hands wanted to shake. Her heart wanted to go back to the moment before the hospital doors opened and Luca Moretti was carried into her life bleeding. But there was no going back. There was only forward. Through fire, through men, through fear. Get me a clean shirt, Elena said. Matteo's brow moved slightly. What? I'm not meeting Mafia captains covered in blood like prey. Something like approval flickered across his face. 10 minutes later, Elena stood in a small washroom beneath the church, scrubbing blood from her arms until her skin turned raw. Maya sat on the closed toilet lid, silent, both lockets in her lap. Elena had given her own locket back. She had kept Isabella's and Luca's ring, the third key and the throne. It felt insane. It felt inevitable. Maya finally spoke. Do you trust him? Elena looked at herself in the cracked mirror. Her face looked different. Not older. Sharper. Like the night had carved something out of her and left edges behind. No, Maya exhaled. Do you love him? Elena's hand stopped under the faucet. The water ran pink, then clear. Outside, men shouted orders. Somewhere in the clinic, surgical machines beeped steadily. Above them, thunder rolled over Chicago like a warning. I don't know what this is, Elena said. Maya's eyes softened. Elena. No. She turned off the water. Love is too clean a word for something born in blood and lies. But Elena stared at Luca's ring on the sink. But when he was shot, I felt it like someone had put a bullet through the only door between me and the dark. Maya said nothing. Elena picked up the ring and slid it back on. I hate that. I know. I hate him a little. I know. And I'm terrified that the part I don't hate is the part that will destroy me. Maya stood and hugged her. For one moment, Elena let herself be held. Then a knock came at the door. Matteo's voice. They're here. Elena pulled away. Maya grabbed her hand. You don't have to do this alone. Elena looked at the matching locket around Maya's neck. No, she said quietly. I don't. The captains gathered in the old sanctuary above the clinic. The church had been stripped of worship and turned into a war room. Pews pushed aside, candles burning beneath cracked saints. Armed men lining the walls. Screens set up beneath the altar, showing encrypted files still waiting to be unlocked. 7 captains stood in a half-circle. Older men, younger men, men with scars, men with rings, men who looked at Elena like she was a mistake that had walked into their kingdom wearing their crown. Matteo stood behind her right shoulder. Maya behind her left. Elena walked to the center alone. The room quieted. One of the captains, a broad man with silver at his temples, looked her up and down. This is insulting. Elena held his khaza. Then leave. A murmur moved through the room. The man's eyes narrowed. You know who I am? No. Then you should be careful. I've had guns pointed at me. My hospital shot up, my apartment exposed, my father's murder reopened, and a dead Mafia king tried to kill me under a burning mansion. Elena stepped closer. You are going to have to be more specific about what part of you is supposed to scare me. The room went still. Matteo's face did not move. But Elena felt his attention sharpen. Another captain laughed softly. She has teeth. The silver-haired man did not. Where is Luca? In surgery. Convenient. Elena lifted Luca's ring. Every man in the room looked at it. He gave me this. He was dying. He was still Luca. That landed. Even the men who doubted him respected that. One captain stepped forward. Younger than the others, eyes cold. Vittorio is the true head of this family. Elena turned to him. Vittorio faked his death. Murdered Samuel Carter. Hunted witnesses, betrayed his wife, and tried to kill the man he raised as his son because Luca wasn't useful anymore. He has blood claim. Elena's voice dropped. Blood is not loyalty. The man sneered. What would a nurse know about loyalty? Elena looked at Maya. Maya swallowed, then stepped forward. My mother hid one of the keys for 17 years. She died with that secret so I could live. Samuel Carter hid another with Elena. Isabella Moretti died holding back Vittorio so Luca could escape. Maya's voice shook but held. Women you never noticed kept your empire alive while men like you bowed to monsters. Silence. Elena felt pride burn through the terror. The young captain's jaw tightened. Matteo stepped forward slightly, but Elena raised a hand. Not yet. She looked at the captains. You want proof? She placed the 3 lockets on the altar. Then Luca's ring beside them. Open it. A technician connected the lockets one by one to the decryption device on the altar. Maya's key. Elena's key. Isabella's key. Then the ring. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the screen behind the altar came alive. Files opened. Names. Payments. Police chiefs. Judges. Hospital administrators. Shell companies. Murder orders. Photos. Audio recordings. Paternity documents. Vittorio's signature. Adrian's payments. The hidden architecture of corruption unfolded in cold blue light across the face of every man in the room. The captain stopped breathing. Elena saw their fear, not of her, of exposure. Good. Let them feel what powerless people felt every day. Then, an audio file began to play. Vittorio's voice filled the church. Samuel Carter dies tonight. The girl stays alive only if the locket remains missing. The nurse and the child are insurance. Burn the rest. Elena's blood turned cold. The nurse and the child. Maya's mother. Elena. Maya. Insurance. Maya covered her mouth. Elena stood very still. Something inside her settled. Not broke. Settled. Like grief becoming aim. The silver-haired captain stared at the screen. Turn it off. Elena looked at him. No. This cannot leave this room. It already has. Every captain looked at her. Elena lifted the small transmitter Matteo had given her minutes earlier. I sent a copy to 3 federal contacts, 2 journalists, and 1 attorney my father trusted. Matteo's eyes flicked toward her. He had not known that last part, because it was a lie. But the room did not know that. And truth was not the only weapon. Fear worked faster. The young captain reached for his gun. Matteo's weapon was at his throat before he cleared leather. Every guard in the church raised guns. Elena did not move. The young captain glared at her. You think wearing his ring makes you Moretti? No, Elena said. I think wearing his ring makes you listen long enough to understand your choices. The room held its breath. She stepped toward the altar, beneath the cracked statue of the Virgin, under candlelight and blue screen glow. Choice 1. Follow Vittorio, a dead man who already sold all of you to keep himself untouchable. His ledger has your names too. Your payments, your crimes, your weaknesses. He doesn't lead men, he owns them. No one spoke. Choice 2. Follow Adrian, a coward who tried to kill a nurse because he was afraid of evidence, then hid behind Vittorio the moment the war turned bigger than him. A few faces shifted. Good. Choice 3. Stand with Luca. Not because of blood, not because of fear, because he had every reason to become Vittorio and didn't. Because Samuel Carter trusted him when he had no reason to. Because Isabella died for him. Because tonight, when every man in this room was calculating power, Luca was bleeding between bullets and me. Her voice cracked on the last word. She steadied it. And because if you stand against him, I release everything. The silver-haired captain stared at her. You would burn the city. Elena stepped closer. No. I would burn the men who think they are the city. Silence. Then, Matteo lowered his head, one knee to the floor. The sound of it hit the church like a verdict. For Luca Moretti, he said. One by one, Luca's loyal men followed. Then the first captain knelt, then another. The young captain did not. Neither did the silver-haired man. Elena looked at them. The young one spat near her feet. Vittorio will skin you alive. Maya stepped forward before Elena could speak. No, Maya said, voice trembling but fierce. He'll try. The silver-haired captain turned and walked out. 3 men followed him. Matteo let them go. Elena watched them disappear through the church doors. Why aren't you stopping them? Matteo stood slowly. Because now we know who to kill. The coldness of it should have horrified her. Instead, Elena only nodded. The war room moved instantly. Orders flew. Safe houses activated. Accounts frozen. Loyal captains assigned territories. Vittorio's known routes marked in red across the city map. Adrian's men hunted through traffic cameras and police chatter. By dawn, Chicago had become a chessboard, and Elena Carter was standing at the center of it wearing a ring too large for her finger. 3 hours later, Mara came up from the clinic. Every conversation stopped. Elena turned. Mara removed her surgical cap. He's alive. The air left Elena's lungs. Maya grabbed her hand. Matteo closed his eyes once. He's stable, Mara continued. Not conscious yet. And if anyone tells him I said this, I'll deny it. But he is too stubborn to die. A broken laugh escaped Elena. It sounded almost like crying. Mara looked at her. He asked for you before the anesthesia took him. Elena's heart twisted. What did he say? Mara's expression softened. He said, "Don't let her trade herself for me." Elena looked down at the ring. Too late, Luca. She descended into the clinic alone. Luca lay in a private recovery room, surrounded by machines, tubes, bandages, and the strange quiet that follows violence when the body is too tired to keep fighting. He looked terrible, alive, but terrible. Elena sat beside him. For a long time, she said nothing. She watched the rise and fall of his chest, watched the pulse at his throat, watched the face of a man who had been made into a weapon and had somehow still chosen, again and again, to stand between her and death. "I held court for you," she said quietly. He did not wake. Elena Carter, trauma nurse. Daughter, by love, of Samuel Carter, accidental enemy of the Moretti Empire. Her laugh was soft and broken. You should have seen their faces. She reached for his hand, then stopped. Her fingers hovered above his. All night, men had grabbed her, pulled her, claimed to protect her, claimed to know what was best. So she made herself choose. Slowly, she took Luca's hand. His fingers were cold. She wrapped both of hers around them. "I'm still angry," she whispered. "I'm angry about the lies, about my father, about my mother, about every year you watched me struggle and called it protection because you were too afraid to walk into my life as anything other than a shadow." The monitor beeped steadily. "But I understand something now." Her throat tightened. You didn't protect me because I was weak. You protected me because you thought everything you touched became ruined. His hand moved faintly. Elena froze. His eyes opened a fraction. Dark, exhausted. Still him. Elena Eraspet. She leaned forward, tears burning despite herself. You're alive. His gaze moved over her face, slow and unfocused, then down, to the ring on her finger. Even half dead, he noticed. His voice came rough. What did you do? Elena smiled through tears. What you would have done. His eyes sharpened with weak horror. That bad? Worse. A breath that might have been laughter left him, then turned into pain. Elena immediately pressed him back. Don't move. You're wearing my ring. Yes. Why? She looked at him for a long moment. Then she lifted her chin. Because Vittorio said a Carter girl couldn't take his throne. Luca stared at her. Something changed in his face. Ave, fear, possession, tenderness, all of it burning under the drugs and pain. And did you? He whispered. Elena leaned close enough that only he could hear. No, she said. I took yours. Luca looked at Elena for a long time after she said it. I took yours. The words should have sounded like betrayal. From anyone else, they would have been. From Elena Carter, standing in the dim recovery room with blood still beneath her nails and his ring hanging too large on her finger. It sounded like survival. Luca's mouth barely moved. Good. Elena blinked. That's all you're going to say? His eyes were exhausted, dark with pain and medication, but something dangerous still lived inside them. If anyone was going to steal my throne, he rasped. I'm glad it was you. A fragile laugh escaped her before she could stop it. It broke halfway into something too close to a sob. For the first time since the hospital, since the bullets, since the lockets and the fire and the dead man's voice coming through the mansion walls, Elena let her shoulders drop, just a little. Luca noticed. Of course he noticed. You're shaking, he said. You were shot 4 times tonight. 3. 1 reopened. I'm counting it. His gaze softened faintly. You always argue with dying men. Only the arrogant ones. His hand moved weakly beneath hers. Not grabbing, not claiming. Just turning his palm upward until her fingers slipped more naturally into his. Elena looked down at their hands. His was scarred, larger, warm now, where it had been cold before. Hers looked small inside it, but not helpless. Not anymore. For a long while. Neither of them spoke. Outside the recovery room, the world was still burning. Matteo's men moved through the church above them. Captains shifted loyalties. Federal files waited in encrypted folders. Vittorio was alive somewhere in the city, wounded but not defeated. Adrian had vanished into whatever dark corner cowards ran to when the war they started became bigger than their pride. There would be more blood, more truth, more consequences. Elena knew that, but for this one moment, the war stayed outside the door. Here, there was only the slow rhythm of Luca's heart monitor, only the soft hum of medical machines, only the man who had lied to protect her and bled to keep his promise, only the woman who had spent her whole life surviving quietly, now wearing a Mafia king's ring like a challenge to every monster who had ever mistaken silence for weakness. Luca's voice came low. I'm sorry. Elena looked at him. He did not dress it up, did not command, did not explain. Just sorry. Somehow that made it heavier. For what? She asked. His eyes held hers. All of it. Her throat tightened. The hospital. Her father. Her mother. The shadows outside her life. The years of being watched. The truth hidden in a locket against her skin. All of it was too much for one apology. Too much for one night. Too much for forgiveness. So Elena gave him the only honest answer she had. I'm not ready to forgive you. Luca closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, there was pain there, but not surprise. I know, but I believe you're sorry. His fingers tightened faintly around hers. That small movement almost broke her more than any confession could have. Elena leaned back in the chair, still holding his hand. "My father asked you to protect me." "Yes, and you did." Luca's jaw tightened. "Not well enough. I'm alive. You were hunted. I'm alive." His eyes turned toward her. Elena's voice softened, but did not weaken. "You don't get to erase what you did right just because you hate yourself for the rest." Luca stared at her like no one had ever said anything like that to him. Maybe no one had. Maybe Luca Moretti had been praised for power, feared for violence, obeyed for his name, but never forgiven for trying. Elena looked at the ring on her finger. "It doesn't fit." His gaze dropped to it. "No, I'll keep it until this is over." "And after?" She looked back at him. The question sat between them, dangerous and unfinished. After Vittorio, after Adrian, after the ledger, after revenge, after truth, after blood stopped being the language everyone around them spoke best. Elena exhaled slowly. "After you ask me properly." Something changed in Luca's face. Not a smile. Not exactly. A flicker of warmth through all the damage. "If I'm alive." Elena leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "You will be." His mouth curved faintly. "That an order, nurse?" "Yes." This time, he did smile. Small, weak, devastating. Then exhaustion dragged at him again. His eyes lowered, but his hand stayed wrapped around hers. "Elena," he whispered, "I'm here. Don't let them make you like us." She went still. Luca's eyes were half closed now, but his voice remained rough with meaning. "The ring is power. The files are power. Fear is power. It will feel clean at first because you'll aim it at monsters." His breath hitched. "Then one day you'll use it because it's easier than mercy." Elena swallowed. Above them, footsteps moved across the old church floor. Men, waiting for her decisions. Men who had knelt because she had threatened to burn their world down. She understood what Luca was warning her about, and she understood something else. He was not afraid she would be too weak for his world. He was afraid she would be too good at surviving it. "I won't become Vittorio," she said. Luca's eyes opened just enough to meet hers. "No," he whispered. "You'd be worse." She frowned. He breathed through pain, gaze locked to hers. "Because people would believe you." The words stayed with her long after he fell asleep. By morning, rain had washed the blood from the church steps, but not from the city. News vans crowded blocks away from the burned Moretti estate. Police statements called it an organized crime incident. Anonymous sources whispered of a succession war. Online, Adrian's video had spread too far to contain, but not far enough to reveal the whole truth. Not yet. Elena stood in the church sanctuary as pale dawn filtered through broken, stained glass. Maya stood beside her, wrapped in a borrowed coat, her locket visible at her throat. Neither of them looked like the women they had been yesterday. Maya's hand still trembled sometimes, but her eyes had changed. There was grief in them now, and fury, and the first hard shape of purpose. "What happens to us?" Maya asked quietly. Elena looked at the altar, where the lockets had opened their secrets. "I don't know. Comforting. I'm working on honesty." Maya gave a tired smile. Then her eyes filled. "My mom was part of this." Elena turned to her. "She was brave. She lied to me my whole life. So did my parents." Maya nodded, swallowing hard. Elena reached for her hand. "They were scared. That doesn't make the lies okay." "No, but it means we don't have to hate them to be angry." Maya's face crumpled. Elena pulled her close. For the first time since the hospital, Maya cried fully. Not in panic, not in shock, in grief. Elena held her beneath the cracked saints and let herself cry too. For Samuel Carter, who had not been her blood but had been her father, in every way that mattered. For her mother, who had carried fear like a second skeleton. For Maya's mother, who had hidden truth inside silver and raised her daughter under the shadow of it. For Isabella Moretti, who had died buying them time, and for Luca, who had lived long enough to become something more dangerous than a king, a man with something to lose. Later, Matteo found Elena near the altar. The captains are waiting. Elena wiped her face. Let them wait. His mouth twitched. You're learning fast. I had violent teachers. He nodded toward the clinic below. He's asking for you again. He's supposed to be unconscious. He's Luca. Elena sighed. That seems to be everyone's excuse for impossible behavior. She returned to the recovery room. Luca was awake, paler than before, but alive. Mara stood beside him with the expression of a doctor, considering murder as a treatment plan. He tried to remove his four, Mara said. Luca looked at Elena. Mara exaggerates. Mara held up the torn tape. Elena crossed her arms. Luca's expression remained shamelessly calm. I needed to know what was happening. You needed to not bleed to death. That too. Mara muttered something about men and stupidity, then left them alone. Elena sat beside him. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. There was too much between them now for easy words. Blood, secrets, attraction, betrayal, a promise made to her father, a ring on her hand, a war outside the door. Luca's gaze lowered to her finger. You still have it. I said I would. You can take it off whenever you want. I know. His eyes lifted. That mattered. The fact that he said it. The fact that she believed him. Elena reached into her pocket and placed the 3 lockets on the blanket beside him. Then the ring. Luca's face changed. Elena. She gently slid the ring off her finger. It left a faint red mark where she had clenched it too tightly. I'm not giving it back because I'm afraid, she said. His eyes stayed on hers. I'm giving it back because if I wear it again, it will be by choice. Not war. Not fear. Not because everyone is watching. Luca was silent for a long moment. Then he took the ring. His hand was weak, but careful. Then I'll wait. Elena's chest tightened. You don't seem like a patient man. I'm not. That sounds like a problem for you. A faint smile touched his mouth. Yes. The quiet that followed was different. Not empty, not safe, but honest. Elena reached for her locket and closed it around the chip inside. Maya's and Isabella's remained on the blanket, 3 pieces of a story that had not ended. Luca looked at them. Your father wanted the truth released. I know. If we release it all at once, the city burns. If we don't release it, men like Vittorio keep owning it. His casa held hers. There was no argument in it, only respect. That felt new. We do it right, Elena said. Not like them. Not in shadows. Not for power. Luca's voice softened. And if doing it right gets you killed? Elena leaned closer. Then you keep your promise better this time. His expression shifted. Pain and devotion tangled together. I will. She believed him. Not because he was good, not because he was safe, but because Luca Moretti made promises like scars, permanent. Outside, the first church bell rang. One clear note over a wounded city. Elena stood. I need to talk to the captains. Luca's eyes narrowed. You need sleep. So do you. I'm injured, and somehow still controlling. Elena. She turned at the door. He looked at her for a long second. The words he wanted to say were there. She could feel them. Possession would have been easier for him. À comment? À demain. Stay. But he did not say it. He let her stand in the doorway with the choice between them. So Elena made one. She walked back to him, bent down, and kissed his forehead. Not his mouth. Not yet. His eyes closed under the touch like it hurt. When she pulled away, his voice was almost gone. What was that? Elena looked at him, exhausted and heartbroken, and stronger than she had been the night before. A beginning. Then she left him there, alive beneath the morning light. Upstairs, Maya waited beside Matteo. The captains waited beyond the sanctuary doors. The city waited beyond the broken windows. Elena touched the locket at her throat. For the first time in 17 years, it did not feel like a memory. It felt like a key. She looked at Maya. Ready? Maya wiped her eyes, lifted her chin, and nodded. No. Elena smiled faintly. Me neither. Together, they pushed open the doors. Every man inside turned toward them. Elena stepped into the room, no ring on her finger, no gun in her hand, no Mafia blood in her veins. Only truth, only grief, only the name her father had given her, Carter. And when she spoke, the room listened. Let's end what our parents started.